Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. This is your DC Spotlight for the week of January 17th, 2023. Really good week of DC books this week. A lot of big titles. Get the second issue of the 60-Second War. We get Batman Fortress. We get Nightwing 100. We get Stargirls. Just a really, really big week. So I thought it was really solid overall, Rocky. What did you think?
I do think there were some stinkers here. I'm always, that's the problem when we have so many to review. I mean, we got, what is it, 13 or 14? So I'm batting a solid half that I liked, and the other half were kind of meh. But still, look, that's still pretty damn good. I mean, if I'm liking 60-70% of what I'm reading in a given week, and we're reviewing so many DC comics, I consider that a win. So I'm smiling this week. I'm smiling more than I'm sad.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, as we break these down, sometimes my knee-jerk reaction is, man, that really was only okay. And then, like, when I start talking about it, when I break it down, I find out that, yeah, maybe I liked it a little more than I thought initially. So before we dive into the book, so I do have a favor to ask everybody. I don't know if you guys follow me on Twitter, but if you do, you see that I'm embarrassing myself on a weekly basis with this Bad Idea fan cup that I'm trying to win.
Yes, you are.
Stuffing my mouth with 28 peeps or dressing up like a werewolf or a cowboy or whatever. So this week's challenge, I have a tweet that needs to get 100 likes. It's pinned to my Twitter right at the top. So if you go to twitter.com/the comic source, all you have to do is like the tweet. You don't have to watch the video. I prefer if you didn't watch the video, because as I said, it's pretty embarrassing. But I just really need everybody, if you have Twitter, please just go over there. It'll take 10 seconds. Go over there. You don't even have to follow me. Just go to my Twitter account, twitter.com/the comic source, and just like the first tweet you see there that's pinned. So that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the first book. World's Finest, number 11. Mark Waid is the writer, Dan Mora on art, Tamara Bonvillain does the colors, Steve Wands on letters. I have a feeling, Rocky, that you probably like this more than me. You were really excited when we found out that this kid who'd come in from another dimension was perhaps Magog. For those that aren't familiar with Magog, he was basically the main villain of the Kingdom Come story that Mark Waid did with art by Alex Ross, which was it's an evergreen, title, graphic novel, what have you, from DC. It's always in print, and it's an amazing story. And then Magog eventually, and supposedly that's kind of Elseworlds, or a different kind of universe, or part of the multiverse of DC Comics. But eventually, Magog came over to the main DCU. So I'm honestly not sure how it stands with Magog these days. Are there different versions of him depending on which part of the multiverse you're in? That's entirely possible. But the hint here recently has been that this David character that came from another dimension, from another parallel universe into the main DCU here, was possibly somebody who was going to evolve into Magog at some point. So in this story, we've had the Key, who's an old school JLA villain from way back in the 60s. And Mark Waid has made him much more malevolent and much more formidable, much more evil in a lot of ways, to the point where he's kind of calling the shots even over the Joker, which is so, I mean, you could even say that Mark Waid has made the Key sort of Joker-like in a lot of ways, but that extra edge of insanity, rather, it's like the Key is just this genius guy who's just evil and you don't want to mess with him. Kind of like the Joker used to be before they made him kind of zany and insane and unpredictable. So I've liked that change with the Key, but it is disturbing in a way. But regardless, the Key has manipulated David and messed with his mind, and inherent to the guilt, the survivor's guilt that he feels, and kind of the angst of being a teenager with these powers. He's not controlling himself very well. And other heroes, specifically Batman and Robin, have really told him, hey, you need to keep under control. We don't hurt people. We don't kill people. but David seems to want to lash out for those reasons that I've said. And he did so at the end of last issue. And so at the beginning of this issue, it looks like Batman and Superman had this conversation, and, you know, just like a scene out of Superman 2, they're going to throw David in this chamber and they're going to remove his powers. I thought that was awfully heavy-handed. Like, there are so many young heroes that make mistakes, and they don't just automatically go and remove their powers. You know, you could look at what they're doing in the pages of Blue Beetle right now, where they just tell him, don't use your powers. They've talked to David about it. Maybe the fact that David is so powerful. I think Batman at one point says like an infant with a machine gun. So maybe it's the level of power. But it didn't sit right with me. It didn't feel right. And Superman, to his credit, does at the last moment stop. Maybe his better angels prevailed. But the fact that they're even willing to go that far, like, I get Batman's paranoid, right? Like, you talk about Brother Eye and all that stuff that caused problems. You could see Batman going down that path. I can't believe Superman would ever even agree to it in theory. So that bothered me a little bit. And frankly, I expect more from Mark Waid. But I don't know. It felt like the easy way out in a lot of ways. But then ultimately, David ends up leaving this multiverse anyway, sort of not by his own volition. You know, the ship that he traveled in, the key went to the Fortress of Solitude and tried to steal it. He activated the ship. They were able to defeat the key, Batman, Robin, and Superman, along with David. But the ship had been activated, and because David's from the same universe, same vibrational frequency, he gets pulled along with it. And of course, he goes to some other parallel universe where Gog is there. So again, the implication being that he's eventually going to become Magog, and it even says not the end, even though it's the end of the story arc. So it kind of cool, kind of a new origin for Magog in a way. But despite the little plot point that I didn't like about them willing to strip the powers from this kid, he's already lost everything, right? He's lost not just his mother and father, and not just his planet. Like, Superman, you could say, has lost his home planet of Krypton. This guy's lost his entire reality. His entire reality has been erased from existence. And I don't know that we ever got like an explanation of how or why his reality was erased. But be that as it may, it's a solid, interesting issue for people that are big Kingdom Come fans. I'm sure they're going to like this. And it's a solid story. I mean, I give Waid a lot of credit for making it feel like a DC book. You know what I mean? Like classic DC. And I'm always going to read Mark Waid when he's writing Superman, Batman, pretty much anybody in the DCU. I like his DC work more than his Marvel work. So despite, like I said, that little plot twist or plot point that I didn't necessarily care for, overall, I felt this was a really strong arc and this was a really strong book. The only other thing I'll say is the Dan Mora art throughout this run has been fantastic. But I do feel like this is some of the weaker art that he's pulled in so far. Only
Seems a
because
little rushed.
It doesn't feel, the line work doesn't feel as clean. It doesn't feel as finished or as polished as it has felt in the past. But I'd say it's like 80% of some of his, best work on this book. But Dan Mora at 80% is still like way better than a lot of people. So,
yes, that is true. Yes.
Yeah. So it's still, I mean, the storytelling is still fantastic, and the emotionality, all the body language and what have you is still great. It just, kind of on the finish, it just didn't look as finished or as polished as it usually does. So anyway, what were your thoughts on this, Rocky?
Well, I like the call. I love the callback to Superman 2 with the red solar chamber that takes away the superpowers. Just in the Superman 2 movie, when he's going to give up his powers in order, at the behest of his mother, saying, if you want to love Lois Lane, you've got to do so as a human, and this chamber will take away your powers. And so we get it used in a different way to potentially strip David of his powers. And it's that. And I enjoyed that dilemma here. I like the fact that Batman was prepared to take David's powers away, because this isn't like Robin screwing up. If Robin screws up, he doesn't destroy a city block or endanger lives necessarily. this is a superpowered being who can't control his anger, and let's face it, they know has got serious potential anger issues because they know enough about his origin that he's guilt ridden from being the sole survivor of his own planet, and his own parents died because he fiddled with the ship, and so he's riddled with guilt, and we know that from past issues, but this is very much in keeping with Mark Waid because Mark Waid does have Superman do the right thing. Because Superman changes his mind, which frankly makes a lot of sense. Superman is under a lot of influence. He respects Batman. So he knows David's a danger, but then, Superman changing his mind, I think adds to the dilemma and adds to the interest in this story because we as readers, you and I can disagree. Well, should David's powers be taken away or shouldn't they? It's an interesting question. And I like that the question is posed because it allows the reader to reflect on the answer, and that in and of itself, any story that makes me think is a win right there. And whether it's positive or negative, whichever side you come down on in terms of whether David should have his power stripped away, I think it poses an interesting question. I love Mark Waid also introduces other, what I assume are Silver Age characters here, because let's be clear, people, Mark Waid has forgotten more about Superman than all of us combined will ever know. The guy's a Superman encyclopedia. So the Key has all these villains that are helping him out because he wants to ultimately gain the secrets of the multiverse through David's ship that he arrived on Earth on. And he's got these other, we meet Bag of Bones, Dr. Phoenix, Acid Master, Ferlin, Nixley, with his Devil's Harp, and Zebra Man. These characters, which I'm assuming they must be from Silver Age stories. Maybe they're new. I don't know. I'm assuming Mark Waid probably, I never Googled any of these characters. They probably exist somewhere in Superman's Silver Age comic books. That would be my guess, but people in the chat can let me know if these characters actually exist. I don't know if I'll have time to Google them, but I kind of like them, and I like the fact that this is action packed, and I love the fact that it ended with them winning the day, David, the Key getting into David's head, but David defeating the Key, and Superman preventing Batman from essentially interfering with David's altercation with the Key, because Batman was afraid that David was going to kill the Key, but Superman had enough faith to let David confront the Key himself, and David chose not to kill him, and so that was at least a temporary victory. Ultimately, at the end, where David is transported to another Earth, was where he meets Gog. We know his destiny is to become Magog. We also know what Magog's destiny is in Kingdom Come. Magog is the one who killed the Joker in Kingdom Come, which set off the events of Kingdom Come, which those of us Kingdom Come is a classic story. Go out and buy it, people, if you've not read it. And I like this. Where does David end up at the end of this issue when he's transported off this Earth because his vibrational frequency matches that of his ship, which the Key turned on and it teleported away? I'm guessing it could be Earth 22, which is the Kingdom Come Earth. It could be another one of Earths in the infinite number of Earths we have out there. But it is teased that it's not the end at the end of this issue, so I quite enjoyed it. And it's one of my more enjoyable this week.
Again, I thought it was really solid. And I'm curious to see what the next arc is, because Waid, like you said, he's been firing on all cylinders on these. So, all right, up next we have Gotham City Police Department, GCPD, The Blue Wall #4. This is from writer John Ridley, drawn by Stefano Raphael, colored by Brad Anderson, lettered by Ariana Mayer. This was kind of a holy crap issue. So I'm gonna let you go first. What'd you think?
Man, I love this issue. I've said, I think it was from issue 1, I said this just harkens back to the great storytelling of Gotham Central. And John Ridley has come under some criticism for the way he's handled I Am Batman and some other DC titles. But I've been enjoying, I think John Ridley in many ways was sort of handed a bag of rotten Halloween candy to a certain extent. I mean, with I Am Batman, the idea of a black Batman, the story leading to it, that was a little bit, I'm not sure any writer could have done a stellar job on that. As it turned out, John Ridley got me interested in Jace Fox's Batman, and I was interested in that. And I thought he did a reasonably good job. I loved his history of his other history of the DC universe. I think is absolutely stellar. He's really good at dealing with those complicated issues of race and and the more problematic issues that arise in with police departments, corruption, those types of storylines. And there's even a trigger warning at the beginning of this comic. So there's really no excuse for anyone if you're reading this and that's your central complaint. Just you were warned. So if you just want traditional superhero storytelling, obviously this comic is not for you. But this to me is just like, this feels like Law and Order to me. This feels like a police serial, and the character work here is just incredible. I love this. We got Danny Ortega, who is the top of his class. He's a top of his class. He's a rookie police officer, and he shot a robber, but he's and so he's a good cop, but he's of Mexican descent, and there's prejudice against him in the department, and he's dealing with that prejudice and racism against him by his fellow officers. We got Eric Wells. He lost one of his. He helped a young juvenile delinquent who ended up killing him, sacrificing his life, killing himself, and this Eric character wants to leave the police department because he wanted to be a hero. He wanted to help the people, and he feels very guilty that he failed to help them. And then we got this Samantha character, who basically could not pull the trigger when she was under a lot of pressure during a stop in a bank robbery, and it's this story. We're in the 4th issue here, and this is really the story about these 3 rookie cops, Danny, Eric, and Samantha, who the young rookie cops, and they're friends with each other, and they want to help each other, and it's through their conversations and through their story, juxtaposed against the story of Commissioner Renee Montoya, who's trying to manage the police department as a whole, that we really get some good character work here, and it's a brief summary of this doesn't do it justice. You gotta really get into this story, and what makes this particular chapter, 4th chapter, so gut-wrenching is you see that the police life is having an impact on young Sam. She comes upon a murder scene. She sees the body of a drug trafficker, a dead drug trafficker. It doesn't affect her. She feels numb. Even Eric's quitting the department because he feels he's failed himself. And Danny Ortega, the young Hispanic police officer, feels numb as well. But he's invited by his fellow cops because he thinks they want to congratulate him for shooting a bank robber, but they tell him to invite his dad, but they just do that to humiliate him and to invite him to some place so they can make a mockery out of his heritage. And it's very heavy-handed a little bit, and I think that could possibly be a criticism. His fellow officers don't respect Danny Ortega, and that part's gut-wrenching, and that's tragic. But we also get Renee Montoya, and she's struggling with it. And we meet Renee Montoya. We meet her brother Benny and his girlfriend Sandra. And Benny and Sandra buy Renee Montoya. They buy her a puppy because the goldfish that she had died at the end of last issue, and the goldfish was symbolic of the fact that Renee wasn't very good at necessarily taking care of things that are her own, and it died last issue, and she was surprised that her brother Benny and his Sandra bought her this dog, and so as this story progresses, we're told the story through Officer Danny Ortega as he's trying to come to terms with what he wants to do to improve, what he wants to do to what on the surface sounds like he wants to become a better cop, improve his standing with the department. He wants to fight against the racism in the department. He wants to do the right thing, and yet I was totally taken by surprise by this, in a complete 180 and misdirection, which actually fits the character. He actually ends up becoming the villain in this story. Reminded me of that phrase from the Batman movie. You either you're either the hero or you live long enough to become the villain. And tragically, this young rookie Danny Ortega actually he wants to rebel against the police, against the force, and take revenge. He blames Renee Montoya for his plight as a discriminated against member of the police department, and he ends up. Unbelievably, it looks like he murders Renee Montoya's brother, Benny, and Benny's girlfriend, Sandra, which is stunning. This is a major event. I mean, for those who are following Renee Montoya's as a character, this has got to be an this is absolutely a seminal event in Renee Montoya's life. In major events in Renee Montoya's life, you could probably say when she came out in the Half a Life storyline in Gotham Central under Greg Rucka and Ed Brubaker, and the other major event in her life was when she became the Question. And now I consider this a major event with the loss of her brother as she's become commissioner. And so this is not a happy for 4 issues, okay? But you can't accuse John Ridley of not having some bang up character development here, and this issue had an impact on me because I was just blown away by the events, and it caught me by surprise, and I'm still sort of processing it and trying to process what happened, and I read this story 3 times because I wanted to, and I quite enjoyed it. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, when this purported cop who all he's ever wanted is to be a policeman and do good, whatever. When he shoots Renee's brother and fiance at the end, I was like, holy shit! I did not expect that at all. I sort of thought, okay, this cop's doing everything right, and he's getting all this crap. Clearly, racism going on in the department, and it's very meta. Here in the U.S., I mean, it's been proven that there's a lot of white supremacists in police departments, and it's not. I don't, buy into the conspiracy theory they're trying to take over, what have you. I just think that there are certain people that are, certain personalities, certain dispositions that are drawn to being a police officer, right? Like you get to carry a gun and, you get to tell people what to do. And so it attracts a certain type of person. And these type of people some of them have a tendency to be intolerant of anybody who's different from them, so whether you want to call it racism or ageism or, they even dislike people that are white if they don't agree with them politically. So they're just very closed-minded, intolerant people. And that's what Ridley is kind of examining here. So it rings very, very true. Um, I did find it a little surprising, and I'm sure this is just for the expedience of the story's sake, to see somebody like Danny Ortega, who top of his class, who has every potential to be a really good police officer, for him to become radicalized so quickly doesn't kind of ring true. It's one of two things. Either he wasn't predisposed to be a good police officer like we're kind of led to believe through the context of the story, and he has some kind of psychotic tendencies himself, antisocial behavior or what have you, to be able to be radicalized so quickly. But again, it might just be for expedience of the story. How long are you going to drag this out? This guy going to put up with years of harassment and unfair treatment and that sort of thing. So it does seem like it's happened relatively quickly. But you could say the same thing about the Eric, the other police officer who actually got into the probation department and quit after one of his assigned cases. The guy basically committed suicide. And he's already quit, given up. Like I think these are things that certainly do happen, but I think it would take a little longer, if I'm honest. So that part doesn't necessarily ring true, but again, I appreciate it for the expedience of the story. And then as far as the Renee Montoya storyline, I was like, yeah, she already killed a fish, so you get her a dog. Like that's worse, What are you gonna have her adopt a kid and kill that too? Like, still get her a dog after she already killed a fish. But I did think it was pretty funny that she's like, I killed the fish, I overfed it. She takes full responsibility. And her future sister-in-law is all, what? The fish couldn't exercise dietary restraint? Like, man, it's a goldfish. It doesn't have the ability, doesn't have the brain power to exercise dietary restraint. If you put fish food in a fish bowl, the fish are going to eat it to the point of their stomachs will explode. That's just the way fish are. So anyway, a little bit of humor, not as much humor in this particular issue. Usually Ridley's good for 3 or 4 solid one-liners, but yeah, this was a much darker issue, and it does seem like Renee Montoya is sort of walking a tightrope in her own life in terms of maintaining her sobriety, dealing with the stresses of the job. Maybe we never gave Commissioner Gordon enough credit for kind of the political aspect of his job and how he tried to stay out of politics and kind of was able to rise above it. I think Renee Montoya, and again, this is something that Ridley is portraying, I think, in a very realistic way. She's sort of unable to stay out of the politics of it. She's a woman, she's in the role of police commissioner for Gotham City, where where in the DC universe, everybody looks to Gotham City, everybody looks to the GCPD for gauging sort of how crime and is in urban areas, and how crime is to be dealt with, because we all know Gotham City has a very high crime rate. So they're held as, they have a lot of eyes on them. Sometimes they're held up as an example of what not to do. And regardless of whether that's true or not, they're always under a lot of scrutiny. And she's the commissioner, so there's going to be eyes on her. And she's a woman, so that brings even more, oh, look, you're going to have people on one side saying, look, a woman doesn't belong. They don't believe women belong as on the police force at all, let alone in a position of authority. And they'll point to every failure. And then you'll have the other side that's saying, well, look at, there's some statistics that we get in this issue talking about how crime in Gotham City is actually improving in terms of the number of homicides and rapes and all that. Those numbers, the frequency of them are going down. So you have the other side that are going to point to Renee Montoya and say, look how successful she is. It's because she's a woman. It's because she's had to put up with all this stuff. She's also lesbian. So you have each one of these things, the fact that she works for Gotham City Police Department, you have one level of eyes. She's a commissioner, you add another level. She's a woman, you add another level. She's a lesbian, you add another level. She has all this pressure. She's not able, I think, inherently because of who she is, to rise above the politics of it like Jim Gordon was able to. So again, I think it's a masterful job by John Ridley in portraying that accurately. And it's an interesting story, even if it has felt a little bit on fast forward to me, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Only in terms of, man, it didn't take long for Danny Ortega, this cop who was probably a shining example of what you want in a recruit, to completely flip and go the other way. And he's declared war on Renee Montoya. What does she have to do with the corruption that's inherent in the system itself? Like, I get that he's going to blame her because she's, head of the Gotham City Police Department, but man, she's doing the best she can. And
she was pretty hard on them. She was pretty hard at them in police, in police school. But I mean, understandably so, because in a way, Renee, when she was yelling at them or teaching them, she was really teaching and sort of yelling at herself, sort of the idea of a teacher learns more than the students type of thing. But I don't think Danny Ortega realizes that she feels that's the sad part.
Love.
Yeah.
It's tough love. It's like you have to have a thick skin. Like, if you're Danny Ortega, you should not think for 1 second that you're getting it any worse than Renee Montoya got it in terms of being persecuted and ridiculed by fellow officers because she's a woman and because she's a lesbian. You have to be the bigger person. You have to not take it personal. But some people aren't built that way. Some people are going to take things personally no matter what. And apparently, Danny Ortega is one of those guys. So kind of sad to see in a lot of ways because he had all this potential. But I'd be lying if I didn't say he was the one recruit, like, early on that I kind of didn't care for. There was something about him that rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know if that was purposeful for Ridley, but I just had a little more faith in the other two. Sam, probably because she was a little more unsure of herself. There was some doubt there, and that I think you need that when you're in a position of authority. You need to. There needs to be some self-awareness that this is what I think, and this is my opinion, but I'm open to the fact that I could be wrong. It's like being open-minded, right?
Yeah.
Like,
it's funny. I felt tragedy for Danny because I felt that I liked his character, unlike you, but that's a testament to John Ridley's great characterization. Because I feel Danny, his father was part of the problem. His father was so relentlessly, ashamed. His father is so cynical about life and about the police and about society, and constantly putting Danny down when he's trying to fight against the racism and everything that Danny, his son, would do. He's constantly putting him down, and that last straw when he takes his dad with him to what he thinks is going to be a party in his favor from his fellow officers, and it's just another way of mocking him. It's his humiliation in front of his dad, and it was the final straw of his relationship with his father. And I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back in this story, and it was so well done. It was so well done.
Well, I actually like Danny more than I ever did in the entire series at the beginning of this issue.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, he's being accepted. Because here's the thing, like he wasn't being accepted, and he was being a whiny baby about it to his dad. But then he would turn around when he talked to Sam and Eric, and he came across as arrogant, and angry, and I'm better than them, and how dare they put me down. Like there was just something about him that rubbed me the wrong way. Like it was almost like he was being bullied, and he was trying to put on a front to his friends saying, it doesn't really, whatever, I don't care, blah, blah, blah. When he turns around to his father and he's complaining about it, he's going to his superiors and he's complaining about it. It's like, well, do something about it. And to his credit, he knows that what he did maybe shouldn't be praised and accepted by the other officers, him shooting and killing a robbery suspect. But yeah, he looked like he was being accepted. So I agree with you. Like, kudos to Ridley. Like that, you really feel for Danny when he takes his dad in. His dad's going to be all proud of him, blah, blah, blah. He opens up the door and it's just maybe the biggest piece of harassment, crappiest thing that the officers have done to him, all along. But again, I do think it would take longer to get to the point where he'd flip out and start killing people, but apparently not. Maybe he was on the edge all along. So again, I give a lot of credit to Ridley for creating a story that's compelling and realistic, and ultimately maybe a little too much meta in terms of, man, our police here in the US, our police departments are not in good shape right now. So anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have The Flash. This is the 1 Minute War Part 2, a 10-second week. It's from writer Jeremy Adams. Pencils are by Roger Cruz, inks by Wellington Diaz, colors by Luis Guerrero, letters by Rob Lee. We learned a little bit more about what's going on. The invading force is called the Fraction. They're apparently there to strip the Earth of minerals, specifically hydrogen, and also they talk about finding conduits. And on a planet this size, there's supposed to be one conduit. Apparently, what they mean by that, a conduit to the Speed Force. Like they have access to the Speed Force. They land, there's the big citadel, and they are moving at, they're tapped into the Speed Force, and they're moving at a very, very fast pace. And that's why everybody else appears to be frozen. It's not that everybody else is frozen, it's that they're moving so fast, everybody else appears to be frozen, except for those that have their own connection to the Speed Force, what the Fraction calls conduits. So when the foot soldiers and lieutenants tell the guy that's in charge, hey, there's a large number of conduits. Oh, well, on this planet, we expect to see one. No, there's 5 just in this immediate area. Oh my God, 5. We have to capture them. We'll take them to the Empress. We'll call it a wedding gift. She'll be very happy. She's going to be happy enough with us based on the fact that this is a very mineral-rich planet. So it's clear that this Fraction invasion force is here to kind of strip mine. And apparently, I don't remember seeing it, but Jesse Quick alludes to seeing this Fraction force, this Fraction race, or whatever you want to call it, back in Flash 783 when they were searching for Barry.
Yeah, what she actually saw was she saw I went back and I reread it. What she saw was the after effects of what the Fraction did when her and Max Mercury went and when they were looking for Barry Allen. The Barry Allen it was on the Mad Max world. The Mad Max world was on the Mad Max world that was destroyed in a dystopian looking world. That world had been stripped of its resources by the Fraction.
Yeah, so apparently that's what this Fraction is here to do. And yeah, this issue really ramps up. It gives us some context. It brings all the speedsters together, and they're starting to sort of figure out, okay, what's going on? Who are these guys? Now they got to figure out, okay, how do we stop them? There's also something going on between Max Mercury and Impulse that's mentioned. Max asks him, how have you been? And he says, oh, I'm fine. Just been babysitting Kid Flash. But wait, you tried, didn't you, to go further? He said, I did, but we'll have to talk about it later. So I don't know what that means. Go further, go for the future, go further in terms of going faster. Like, not sure exactly what's going on there. But there was a humorous moment early on between Impulse and Kid Flash when Impulse tries to vibrate through the wall of the Citadel that the Fraction has established because they're trying to get in there to do some reconnaissance, figure out who these guys are. They can't run up the side of the wall because apparently it's frictionless, and they're not able to vibrate through it either. So clearly, the Fraction is very familiar with the Speed Force, and they have countermeasures in place to prevent that. If there's anything that I didn't like, and it's a very very small nitpick because I am really enjoying this. I thought it was better than average after the first issue, but the first issue was a lot of setup. With how fast paced this issue is, and with everything we learned, I'm thinking I'm really going to love this event. Except for, and Rocky could probably predict what I'm going to say here. I mentioned this Empress, this guy that's in charge of this invasion force wants to capture these 5+ conduits, who we know as the Flash family, 5+, capture them and give them as a gift to the Empress. And the way they're going to do that, there's some of the lieutenants, we can handle it. And the guy's like, like you did last time, I need these conduits alive, not, ripped to shreds or whatever. So they're going to bring in like this secret weapon type person to capture them. And we get the, reveal, as we often do on the final page of the issue. And it's a character called Miss Murder. And she comes walking out of her cage, I guess you'd say. And she's got a couple of these demonic looking dog like creatures that have multiple eyes and fangs, and it's very strangely colored with gray and purple and blue. And then she's wearing this like skin tight costume with like spikes on it, and instead of a full like the ribbon style cape, and a little cliched, felt a little 90s in terms of the look. And then she's all shaved, head's all shaved with a white mohawk. But worst of all, she's got like the round spiked thing around her head, just like the Batman Who Laughs Last. I cannot stress enough how much I absolutely hate that design. I don't like the Batman Who Laughs Last as a character. But part of what I don't like about him is that wrap these spikes around. How do you see? It bothers me every single time. Yeah. And it's bad enough with the Batman Who Laughs. And then we had just recently, the Harley Who Laughs Last. And now this isn't the Speedster Who Laughs Last or what have you. She's called Miss Murder. But her look is so reminiscent of the Batman Who Laughs that you can't think of anything else. And I get that the Batman Who Laughs Last is really popular. And so I suppose that's why they've gone with this design. But I hate it. I hate it. And if it wasn't for the round thing around the head with the spikes, I probably would just kind of shrug my shoulders and be like, okay, it's not for me, but I wouldn't actively dislike it. But I so dislike that look of the round spike thing. Like, yeah. How do you ever sit down in a chair, a high back chair? How do you ever lay down? How do you do anything when you have these spikes protruding like 6 inches off your head?
Well, you take it off.
Like, can you take it off? Then
I don't know.
Please, for the love of God, Miss Murder, take it off, because it looks so stupid. I will die on that hill. It is the dumbest looking thing. And don't get me wrong, I love Greg Capullo, both as an artist and as a person. He's amazing. But man, I don't know. I wish he had never come up with that design. I really, because it's popular, and if it catches on and we see even more characters, it's just going to start irritating me more and more. Like I cannot stand it. I just cannot stand it. So I'm going to stop ranting about it, because again, it is a minor nitpick. I hope she comes and goes quickly and I don't have to look at her, because God, I can't stand it. So anyway, what are your thoughts on the issue?
Well, it's funny. This at one point there's an editorial note in this issue that says that references at one point the general, we assume he's a general of the Fraction army. He talks about he wants to capture all the organic conduits, and by organic conduits we mean those people who who can access the Speed Force, which basically are the Flashes. And because a whole slew of organic conduits have been found and believe are located on Earth, and of course that's basically the Flash family. But this general, we don't get his name. But the editorial note says, see the Flash 1 Minute War Special. Well, that comes out next week, the Flash 1 Minute War Special, or actually 2 weeks from now. Now, I have already read that. I won't spoil anything, and I also won't say his name. But these characters' names, we're not given the names of these characters, and it's a little frustrating. I actually think, having read Flash 1 Minute War Special, that it ought to have come out before this issue. to be honest. I think it would have made more sense from a narrative point of view. That's a little bit of a nitpick, but there's enough here to tease the reader, because when this general clad in, he looks pretty cool. He's got this glowing red. He's got this almost look like a Iron Man arc reactor in the middle, and he looks pretty intimidating. And he's the general of the fraction. He wants to get a hold of these organic conduits, and what he talks about an organic conduit that they captured on a dark world, which I assume means somewhere in the dark universe. So that's a reference to the dark universe. So, and then all of a sudden we get this Miss Murder coming out. And what's interesting to me is I'm wondering who is this Miss Murder an analog of? When she first comes out, I got versions of Harley Quinn, because I think of the two hyenas. So when this Miss Murder comes out, she wears the Batman Who Laughs spiked around her eyes, and these two dogs. Is this like a dark universe's version of Harley Quinn? But I'm thinking, well, no, wouldn't this be a dark version of a Flash character in the Flash family, because she has access to the Speed Force. So this would be a dark universe character that is a conduit for the Speed Force. And as you can infer that from what the general says. So I'm really curious, who is this? She's got her mouth taped shut. So is this a Miss Martian character? Is this Magenta? I'm thinking of all the people in Flash's rogues gallery that might have access to a Speed Force. Is this like a female reverse Flash in the dark universe? I don't know, but it's one can speculate. We will be getting more information about Miss Murder moving forward, obviously. But I quite enjoyed this issue. There were great character moments. You talked about them already. I won't belabor the fact. This is a callback. We did get it. We didn't know it at the time, but in a previous issue of Flash, we did see a world that was left destroyed in the Mad Max world, where that Barry Allen race car driver was on that particular world when they were looking for Barry Allen. Just a lot of good character moments here. A lot more battles against the Fraction. It's really cool to see. And by the end of this issue, as I could get it, only 20 seconds have passed. Now, this is a 60-second war. There is one point, the caption reads 20 seconds have passed, so we got 40 seconds left in this war. Just kind of funny to think of it that way. So I just love this. Jeremy Adams is having a lot of fun. Roger Cruz's art here is better than the opening issue. I like this art a lot more. And yeah, I'm pretty sure. I just want to confirm that yes, Roger Cruz did all the pencils and the inks. Wellington Diaz, maybe it's a different inker, but I like the art better in this second chapter than I did the first. But I'm very happy with this, and I'm sure people who've been along for the ride so far, continuing to show some love for Jeremy Adams. He's doing a really good job on this.
Yeah, I mean, no surprise. Jeremy Adams is a favorite of ours. He's just been killing it on all these Flash books. So yeah, I'm excited that he's getting his own event, and so far it's off to a great start. I am going to ask him next time I talk to him, though. Did you have a hand in the design of Miss Murder? Because man, next time ask me. Like he cares what I think. But anyway, up next, Black Adam number 7. The issue is entitled Bolt, and apparently that's the new superheroic name of the nephew of Black Adam or descendant or what have you. But anyway, it's written by Christopher Priest, Jose Luis, and Jonas Trinidad on art, Matt Herms on colors, Willie Schubert handles the lettering. I'm going to let you go first, because honestly, I feel like I'm a bit lost in this series. I know that's usually it's the other way around, but man, I'm having a hard time following this one.
Sure. There's a couple of plot points here where I got a little, I need to refresh my memory. I'm a little bit lost too. Black Adam doesn't even show up in this issue. He's not anywhere in this issue. It's all White Adam and Mirror Master of all people. Now, that's not to say some interesting things don't happen. It just seems, it was disappointed that Black Adam wasn't here. Now, basically, this issue involves Malik. Malik, who is this White Adam. Malik is in his apartment, and he's looking for the ring because he thinks he thinks that the ring is what's causing his hand to get all crispy and might disintegrate away like Black Adam did in the first issue before coming back. And he's wondering where Black Adam is. He's wondering where Teth Adam is. Lots of people are wondering where Teth Adam is, but this takes place during the Dark Crisis, and there's actually scenes at the beginning that show that while Malik is in his apartment looking for this eye of Hurin, which is in this ring that Teth Adam was wearing, it shows that Black Adam is actually in the midst of the Dark Crisis. And meanwhile, we have this Sargon character who needs this ring, wants this ring for reasons which, frankly, if I knew the last time, if I don't know why he wants this ring. I'm not really sure what the significance of the ring is. This Sargon refers to himself as King of Akkad, King of Summer, Overseer of Ishtar. There's a lot of references here. Writer Christopher Priest has drowned this storyline in Egyptian gods, Egyptian mythology in a way that it makes it a very, very challenging read. It's the plot is there, but it assumes a lot on the part of the reader's discipline to really follow very closely all the thing that's said. Malik changes into Shazam, and he follows. He has Teth Adam's iPhone, if you can believe this, and he looks because Teth Adam is also an ambassador and he has a phone, and the last communication that Teth Adam got was at a particular warehouse, and then he goes to this warehouse where inside the warehouse is it's so bright. This warehouse is very dark. The moment he enters the warehouse, bright lights come up, and he believes, Malik concludes that the reason why the lights are so bright is because the lights are feeding off of him for some reason. So he says Shazam, and it changes him back into Malik, and then he becomes trapped in this warehouse because it was actually a trap that was perhaps initially set to capture Black Adam. And there's a VR set, a virtual reality set there that he puts on, and he meets a virtual reality version of Black Adam called the Mighty Adam, which I don't know why that's in the VR set. I'm not really sure why that is, but apparently there's a lot of mirrors in this warehouse, and the mirrors tip off Mirror Master, because the Mirror Master, who's currently a member of Task Force X, the Mirror Master is actually somewhat of an anti-hero in this issue. He knows that he figures that he concludes that a young kid is falling into this death trap, because this is a death trap that's sort of been, somebody has reworked one of Mirror Master's death traps, and once you're in this death trap, once you're in this mirror world, you lose oxygen and you slowly die. Malik eventually gets out of it by going back into virtual reality world, and he can't say the word Shazam in our world, in the real world, because something's affecting his state of mind because of the way the trap's set up. But he goes back into the virtual reality world, the VR world, and says Shazam, and that allows him to escape, but not before it renders him unconscious, and it ends with Mirror Master looking over an unconscious Malik. And we don't really get a lot of plot progression here. We get some interesting dialogue. It was actually nice to see Mirror Master. I thought Christopher Priest did a good job incorporating Mirror Master. I think the art was fantastic. I mean, it was really, really good. I want to give kudos to Jose Luis and Jonas Trindade on the art, and Matt Herms on the colors. This was a beautifully illustrated comic. Great callbacks and flashbacks in the virtual reality world of this Mighty Adam who's giving a pep talk and treating Malik like his sidekick. I'm not really sure where all this is going. What this series has established so far is Black Adam's primary gods now are not Olympic Greek gods; they're now Egyptian gods, and that's where and his origin has been tweaked a bit. But this hasn't been a particularly easy to follow story. But I do think that this is going to be one of those stories that reads much better, much better as a trade. And the art truly is, the art does the story justice, maybe elevates the story a bit. And if it wasn't for the art, I may have not have been as disciplined as I was in reading the story, that you really got to read to get all the nuance in. So mixed results at the end of the day. And so I got mixed feelings about it, but I'm looking forward to see how this resolves. This is 12 issues long, this series, which I think is probably 6 issues too long for the story, because I feel that this story is adding to some decompression unnecessarily. So what do you think?
Yeah, came away.
Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
No, no, not on mute. Can't hear me. Hello, hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so I sort of feel the same way. It's sort of inherent into a Christopher Priest plot. The way he writes, it's just there's a lot of subtext, there's a lot of different plots, there's a lot of jumping around, and I know he uses those kind of trademarked by him black boxes with the white lettering to kind of tell us where we're at in the story and you jump around between settings, but it's not always clear. And it was the same thing with his Deathstroke run, which was very, very good, but I ended up reading it in big chunks, and I did a reread when the whole thing was done, and I got a lot more out of it. And so, yeah, I agree with you very much. And then it's the idea of introducing all these other, for lack of a better term, Black Adam family characters, right? Like we've got this Dr. Malik character who's new, and what's his relationship, and then we're changing the gods that are basically the patron gods of Teth Adam. So yeah, it's introducing a lot of complexity, and what is drawing from things that have come before, what is Christopher Priest just creating out of whole cloth, what's going to be the status quo for Black Adam going forward after this. Is it even going to be clear? What's this idea of creating these new code names? Because this guy was going to be White Adam, now he's Bolt.
Yeah.
Like you said, Black Adam himself doesn't even show up in this
Yeah.
issue.
Don't we have a Bolt elsewhere in the DC universe? I thought that was a member of Teen Titans Academy, wasn't Bolt? Isn't that used already?
I could, I mean, most likely it is. Obviously, there's the meta joke here, the dog from, I think it's Disney movies, that's called Bolt.
Yeah.
But anyway, be that as it may, I agree with you wholeheartedly. This will be read better as um, a trade and all together in one collection, but there's still going to be questions left unanswered, is going to be my thought. Because again, when Christopher Priest creates, when he writes things, he pulls in from all kinds of different sources, and there's not always space, there's not always real estate to explain it all. So I think it is worth reading, and I think it does what it's probably supposed to do in terms of what Christopher Priest, what direction he was given by DC editorial. That's probably, hey, let's align Black Adam a little more with actual Egyptian gods, um, because of what was going on with the Dwayne Johnson movie, which, if you've been following the news, there's not going to be a sequel, and there's supposedly no hard feelings, but seems like hard feelings. And you can
Yeah.
hardly blame Dwayne Johnson for, he spent 10 years of his life trying to get this to the big screen, and it
Yeah.
wasn't really that well received. And it is what it is. So let's move on. Up next, we have Titans United Bloodsport #5. This is from writer Kevin Scott, Lucas Myers the artist, Tony Avina on colors, Carlos and Manguel on letters. So for those that haven't been following along, first of all, you should be reading this because the art is fantastic. Very bright primary colors. There's always a little logo on every cover saying "Watch Teen Titans on HBO" or "Watch Titans" rather on HBO Max, and it's good that that's on there, because this really is a series where you don't have to read anything else. You don't have to have any context. If you have some basic knowledge of who the Titans are, you're going to enjoy this. And what's been happening is the Titans have been thrown into some sort of alternate reality where Brother Blood has basically won the day, as it were, and various of the Titans are actually working for Brother Blood. Others appear to be fighting against him and have sort of had their brain washing, I guess you'd say, exposed or reversed by Tim Drake, who was thrown into this world from our own reality. And it's basically been the Titans trying to come together and rescue the others that are still kind of brainwashed, and fighting against Raven, who in this reality, although it's Brother Blood who has sort of won the day, as I said, it's not the Church of Blood that is in charge. It's the Church of Raven, with Raven as the head of that church. So at the end of last issue, we saw that Connell was about to be executed. Obviously, the Titans show up and save him, and they rescue a few others, including who they think is Raven, and along with Donna Troy, But then when they get back to their hideout, things are not what they appear, and Donna Troy is still not all there in terms of what she remembers. She's sort of hell bent on revenge, and she attacks who she thinks to be Raven. And it turns out that they didn't save Raven; they saved Jinx. And so Jinx is not in a good way when the story ends, basically at the hand, or when the issue ends, I should say, basically at the hands of Donna Troy. So somewhat of a brutal ending. But like I said, the art's fantastic. This is an action-packed issue. It's action from start to finish, and I was especially impressed with the colors. There's lots of like lightning and these like glowing energy chains, and the executioner that's about to cut off Con-El's head has like this Kryptonian axe that's like glowing green, and all the color work is just fantastic. Like it literally looks like it's glowing and it's lit from within. So I have to give a big shout out to the color artist Tony Avina. So what are your thoughts on this?
The art is fantastic. The art is fantastic. That was the one thing that I've been enjoying this story. This is so clearly in its own continuity, and I got no problem with it whatsoever because I just enjoy it. It's so well done. It's easy to follow the story, and it is sort of an alternate timeline, not an alternate Earth, I think, but an alternate timeline, and it's really about dealing with they're trying to basically their comrades are basically, I guess, brainwashed, or their memories have been changed in this alternate timeline. And it's really just a struggle of the Titans to remember who they really are and get the job done and basically, I guess, correct the timeline. Now, the art is fantastic. I actually wish, I want to give a shout out. Who's the artist? John Meyer?
Lucas, I think.
Kevin Scott's the writer.
Lucas Meyer.
Lucas Meyer. I mean, this guy's incredible. He really is. This guy should be on other titles. This guy should be on more mainstream, bigger DC mainstream titles. This guy's a keeper. I'd like to see him do more. I'd like to see him on any other, like many other DC titles. He just has a particular style that I just like. And my God, the colorist there, Tony Avina on the colors. Wow. I mean, you mentioned it. I mean, those pages with those chains, and in particular, there's one with Raven, with Jinx possessed by Raven, and the glowing these bright white chains. It's extremely well done. Well paced, enjoyable story, and you don't have to worry about being bogged down with continuity, so it's well worth it. There's a reason why Titans United Bloodpact. Well, there's a reason why Titans United got a sequel, and that's because of Kevin Scott. He did a very good job on the first one, and like as you said, this is really a nice. I love the advertisement of the Titans on HBO Max. This does it justice.
Yeah, again, I highly encourage you. Anybody who has like friends that want to get into DC Comics, this Titans United, like either this one, the Bloodpact series, or the previous one that was just called Titans United, are great ways to introduce somebody where they don't have to read anything else. Like this is what it's like to read a comic, and who knows, it might turn them into a comic fan. So recommend it. All right, up next, one that I haven't read, but I know you have, Rocky. Fables number 157 from Bill Willingham, writer, creator. Mark Buckingham is the penciler. Steve Lealoha does inks. Lee Luffridge on colors. Todd Klein on letters. Continuing the previous Fables story after like an 8 or 10 year hiatus. So,
yeah.
Well,
what do you think? Well, as I said, if you're a fan of Fables, you really have to be following this from the beginning. This will be a little bit probably impenetrable. You can't just pick this up blind and really necessarily get into it. Although there's some humor in it. Bill Willingham is fairly good at humor most of the time. This is chapter 7 called Summer Winds of the Black Forest. This is basically a 12 issue I'm assuming, I don't know if this is a series, but it's 12 issues long, this Black Forest storyline. And it's really about Snow White and the big bad wolf, Snow White and Bigby Wolf, and their 7 children sort of fitting into the Black Forest. And Bigby has taken over the Black Forest because he's like the top dog, and he's got the power essentially of a god. And meanwhile, in this issue, we've got one of the daughters is rescued. She's essentially trapped in a teacup on top of a turtle, which is its own little fairy tale world. She gets rescued with the help of Snow White and her father. And she's got to have some negotiations with the South Wind, and her dad she's like the North Wind, and her name is Winter. Meanwhile, we got a 5 years pass, and Blossom, one of the daughters of Snow White and Bigby Wolf, falls in love with Nature Boy, and Nature Boy's father is making a power play for the Black Forest, and so that's going to put him into conflict with the Big Bad Wolf. So those sort of machinations are going on, a little bit of Game of Thrones there. Meanwhile, we have Cinderella, who runs the 7th branch of the American military, dealing with magics and because once the Fables were revealed to the world at the end of the run 10 years ago, what happened is that Cinderella has been revealed. She survived. She now works for the government, and she is now she has to deal with fables that get out of hand. And Peter Pan has gotten out of hand. And Peter Pan has ultimately ended up killing a bunch of police officers in the earlier issues. And this other innocent character, this green archery character whose name, I'm sorry, I forget. It's been a while. It's been 2 months since we last got an issue. She basically, Peter Pan got away and put the blame on another Fable character who Cinderella releases from prison. And so Cinderella is closing in on Peter Pan. This is the 7th chapter of 12 for this story arc. So there's a lot of moving plots here, and I'm enjoying it. And Mark Buckingham's art continues to be great. I love it, but I'm so completely used to it. I don't know. I've never seen anyone else draw Fables, frankly, interiors, other than maybe with a couple of crossovers, I think, back in the day with Jack of Fables. But I'm enjoying this, and if you're a fan of Fables, you're probably going to, I'm assuming most people are waiting for the trades, because there's no question this reads way better as a trade. Fables always do. But I'm a completionist, and I got the entire original run, so I'm definitely on the run for this. But this is something that if you're a Fables fan, you definitely want to pick up. If you're not, wait till the trade comes out. You'll enjoy it more.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the case. And if you're curious about those old school Fable stories, from everything that everybody tells me, they're really fantastic. I don't know, maybe we'll read them at some point, but they're all out in trade. You can pick them up. So. All right, up next we have Batman One Bad Day presents Bane, The Last Vengeance of Bane, from writer Joshua Williamson. Howard Porter's the artist, Tomei Moray on colors, Steve Wands on letters. Man, I'm not sure how I feel about this one. So I'm going to let you go first, Rocky, because I'm curious as to your thoughts. What do you think?
Okay. Yeah. Well, first I want to give a comment on the covers. The covers are actually pretty decent. I really love cover A. Cover B is pretty good too. I'm not even sure who the artist is on cover B. Cover C is Jim Lee. Cover D is pretty cool by some guy Liam or somebody.
That's Liam. Yeah, that's Liam Sharp.
Liam Sharp. Yeah, that's gorgeous. Yeah. And actually, I should have probably recognized that, but that actually does look pretty cool. Great biceps on when Liam Sharp draws it. But my favorite cover, because I'm a Brian Boland, is I love the Brian Boland cover. Unfortunately, I think the Brian Boland covers for this series are all ratio variants, so they're 1 in 25 or 1 in 50, and I just don't buy those. I just don't buy those out of principle, because I'm not going to spend more than cover price for a cover. So my favorite cover is something I won't be picking up, unfortunately. But you never know. Brian Boland, I love you, my friend, but tell DC to share the love for guys like me. I guess DC wants us to spend more money just on one comic. I would think DC would want to make the cover accessible for all of us at a regular cover price as everything else, so that we can buy more DC comics, as opposed to having us budget to just buy one of these. And most of the money goes to the retailer anyway. But in any event, that's a soapbox that I'm on for another day. The story here, the story here written by Joshua Williamson, art by Howard Porter, Tommy Mori on the colors. I'm still sort of processing this story. I think that there's not much to this story. It's kind of funny. It starts off with I guess sometime in the future. I feel it's in the future because Batman's apparently dead and Bane is now a wrestler, and he's a wrestler, and he that's how he makes money on the side. And this opens up in a way in a double page spread, letting us know the title, The Last Vengeance of Bane, and he fights a Batman-like wrestler, and he breaks the wrestler's back, and it ends up all being a show, and that's part of the wrestling show. You know, it's like it's sort of an annual tradition in the wrestling confederation that Bane is in. That every year they have an annual breaking of the Batman because Bane is one of the wrestlers, and that's his life. And then apparently he lives in Wayne Manor because Batman's dead, and so Bane it looks like, I think he's taken over Wayne Manor. And lo and behold, there's this kid that wanders in that's stolen some venom. And Bane he's sworn that he's going to eliminate all venom because, in a nutshell, on Batman's last mission before Batman died, Batman died saving Bane's life from this grudge character. This grudge character who was hoarding all this venom and selling venom, and Batman at one time helped Bane eliminate all the venom, and so they teamed up, and Batman kept it secret for reasons that don't make any sense, quite frankly. Batman never told the rest of the Batman family that he was working with Bane to eliminate all venom, and in that adventure, apparently Batman dies, and then Bane, I guess, has sort of wallowed in a fit of depression for years, became a wrestler for reasons which are never explained. I didn't quite understand Bane's character evolution here. I didn't think it was particularly believable from what I know of the character. Bane sort of then wallows in self-pity. And then when he finds out from this kid is trying to sell Bane venom. He's trying to sell his venom because this kid wants to pay off his dad's. This kid who ends up becoming Bane's sidekick at the end of the issue. This kid wants to pay off his dad's debts, and his dad is a drug dealer. His dad was a drug dealer who died and has debts, and now he's obligated to pay off his dad's debts from the other drug pushers, and so he wants to sell venom, and Bane says, no, he destroyed the venom, and Bane basically at first hated this kid, but then this kid's going to help him destroy the venom, and they end up going to Texas, and they end up confronting this Dr. Randolph Porter, who was the original creator of Venom, and Randolph Porter, this doctor, becomes sort of zoned out and becomes a venom-like creature at the end, and they end up in this big battle, and ultimately, Dr. Randolph Porter, as addicted to venom himself, breaks Bane's back, but just like Batman came back with a broken back, so did Bane, and he ultimately defeats this Porter character, and then while Bane's recovering in the hospital, what didn't make any sense to me is that I think he hallucinate Batman appearing? Batman's alive, and we thought Batman was dead. So I don't know if the whole thing was a dream, if it actually happened. Is Batman's dead, and then Batman comes back, and Bane says the greatest moment of his life was when he broke the bat, and that's what defined him. And so Bane at the end wanted to fight Batman, to die in battle against Batman, so that his life has meaning, so he can die or live or move forward. And Batman, if he's hallucinating Batman, Batman tells him, no, basically go out and find a new purpose to your life. And so that's what Bane does. Bane at the end takes this sidekick kid, and they drive off into the sunset looking for new adventures, and Bane looking for new reasons to exist other than always being obsessed with his breaking of the bat. A scene that is very telling at the beginning is when Bane living in Wayne Manor, on top of the fireplace in Wayne Manor is the classic picture of Bane breaking the back of Batman. sort of symbolizing that this is what defines Bane. This is what will always define Bane. And I think that this story, One Bad Day, although I'm not really sure why it's called One Bad Day, again, it's just a Bane story. This is just Bane trying to find a new reason to exist, a new purpose for his life other than being the guy that broke the Batman. And so, I mean, it wasn't a bad story. It was decent enough. I don't know how on earth it can be in continuity, to be quite blunt.
Well,
Because
I don't think any of these are in
yeah.
continuity.
Well, the thing is, though, I mean, we said that about Tom King. Tom King was apparently said that was in his One Bad Day was in continuity, even though frankly it can't be.
Yeah,
Just
I
like
don't
this
think any.
can't
I
be
mean,
it.
he wants it to be. That doesn't mean that
Yeah,
it is.
yeah. So I don't know, but it's not a bad story. It's just it's okay, I guess. It's just it's not. It is what it is. I know I've been hard on Joshua Williamson, but I have to say this story had a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you got a sidekick for Bane, so it worked for me. It wasn't bad. It was okay.
Yeah, I kind of felt the same way. Like I didn't really. First of all, I didn't think the Howard Porter art was his best work. I thought it was kind of messy at times, and yeah, it felt like, and longtime listeners of the podcast will know I'm never a big fan when they try to turn a villain into a hero. And Bane is a great villain for Batman. In my opinion, Bane is a better choice for Batman's arch nemesis than the Joker is, because Bane, while maybe not quite on the same intellectual level as Bruce Wayne, he's close. And as a strategist, he's real close. And physically, he probably surpasses Bruce Wayne. So in my opinion, he's somebody who's better as a choice for Batman's arch villain. Um, and so turning him into this anti-hero, yeah, it just didn't quite work for me. I think part of the reason that Bane and Batman kind of push each other's buttons is because they are so similar in so many ways. And when they look at each other, they see, the worst parts of themselves kind of reflected back. So I just can't see, even to get rid of Venom, I just can't see um, Bane ever really teaming up with Batman, and vice versa. And then as far as him, sort of reliving glory days, quote unquote, by, breaking the bat every night as a wrestler. Yeah, it was corny and didn't really work. I sort of like the idea of Batman being killed, sacrificing himself for Bane, going up against this. What was the doctor's name again?
Uh,
Dr.
uh,
Porter. Dr. Porter,
Dr.
that's right.
Porter, yeah,
Because it's Howard.
Randolph
Yeah,
Porter.
yeah. Howard Porter's the artist, and they named
Yeah,
the Dr. Porter. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I sort of like that. I mean, even though I don't buy the team up, I sort of like that. Um, Batman sacrificing himself to take out Grudge, but then having him show back up. So, like you said, apparently he didn't die, and so he's been in fighting in secret all this time. Like, I don't know. There's
yeah,
just too many things that weren't explained that didn't make sense to me. Um, and yeah, it ends up with Bane sort of having, like you said, to look for a new purpose. Batman is, quote unquote, dead in terms of, even though he might still be fighting crime, he's doing it, from more in the shadows than he ever has. He doesn't want anyone to let him know he's alive. Maybe he feels he's more effective that way, which is interesting. A different way to fight crime. We're going to talk about another book where Batman finds a different way to fight crime in a little bit, which has some hints of some not so great future. But yeah, Bane. Like I don't know. Are Joshua Williamson? You're trying to turn Bane into a good guy? Like I'm not. And if you are, I just don't think that works for the character. Like this didn't. This felt like with all these stories. The prompt that editorial gave these writers, at least from my understanding, all the writers I've talked to, they're like, okay, boil the character down to his essence. What is core to the character, and give us that quintessential story for that character. And the example that they all gave, right, was the way Killing Joke defined Joker, and you could say in a bad way, because it leaned in this idea of the Joker being more psychotic than ever, as opposed to more of a crime boss, more of almost like a kingpin like character, like I was talking about before with the Key, right? You took Joker from that sort of, yeah, still a bad guy, still evil, but wants to rule crime and wants to have power, to this guy who will kill at the drop of a hat, and just in a way more scary, right? Because he's less constrained. But there's no doubt that the Killing Joke really, as I said, redefined Joker and eventually became continuity. And that was the prompt that everybody, these writers were given, right? Like, take Penguin and give us that quintessential Penguin story. Take the Riddler and give us that quintessential Riddler story. I don't feel, I mean, this is a good Bane story. You could argue that it's a very interesting Bane story. But is this the quintessential Bane story? Well, no, I don't think you could say that it is, because in a lot of ways, there's a lot of redemption for Bane in this story. And I just don't think that works for the character. That's not who Bane is. At his core, Bane's not somebody who, in my opinion, is going to work with Batman. Bane, in my opinion, like, they could have the same goal. Batman wants to wipe out Venom and make sure nobody uses it. Bane wants to wipe out Venom and make sure nobody uses it. Batman might be willing to use Bane to accomplish his mission. I don't think he would want to work alongside him, but he might use him, try to manipulate him, get information from him, what have you. Bane, the Bane that I know, if Batman said, hey, let's team up and take out Venom, Bane would be like, you'll just hold me back. You'll prevent me from killing people. You'll prevent me from a final solution. You're not good enough, Batman, to be my partner. That's Bane, right? With the ego, and he thinks he's better. So to me, this just isn't the quintessential Bane story. So that doesn't mean it's a bad story. Just, I don't feel like it follows the prompt. And again, the Howard Porter art was only okay. So this is probably, I think, my least favorite of the One Bad Day story so far. So, all right, up next, again, very curious, Rocky, your thoughts on this. It's Batgirls number 14. The Rest is Silence. And it's almost a silent issue, but I guess Cloonan and Conrad, who wrote the story, just couldn't go all silent. And so there is a letter from Stephanie Brown at the end. So we do get some text. We do get some dialogue, even though it's nobody speaking. Written by the aforementioned Clunrad. Jonathan K does the art, including the colors and the letters. And I thought, wasn't he the one that did the art on the annual, where we really like the art a lot more? This is a much more mature art style, I'll say.
Yeah.
And it did give a more mature feel. And so basically this is Cassandra Cain looking for Stephanie Brown, but Cassandra Cain is not Cassandra Cain. As far as I know, I haven't seen anything otherwise. The last issue of Batgirls, Cassandra Cain and Stephanie Brown had still Freaky Friday. They still were living in each other's body. But
no, they're back. They went back at the last issue.
Okay,
They're not in each other's bodies.
They had that ritual with the coin.
Yeah,
with Zatanna, is that right?
They went back. Zatanna fixed it at the end. Okay. So now Batgirl has some idea, or she's got some.
That makes more. Yeah, that makes more sense. I should have gone back and looked at the previous one. I thought I recalled that, but now that you say that, yeah, I do remember. Okay, so that makes this a little better, because what I was going to say was that this Cassandra Cain, or this version of Batgirl, which, you know, is the way Cassandra Cain looks, and if it was Stephanie Brown, I'm just not buying it, because Stephanie is nowhere near the fighter that Cassandra Cain is. So it does make a lot of sense that Cassandra is able to fight at the level she does, and she takes on like all these ninjas. And her mom's even there to help her out, cutting the legs off of people, which was kind of brutal. But again, even though this art it's not really an art style that I subscribe to. A lot of primary colors, and it's just very, very static with kind of heavy lines. So it's not my favorite, but I think it is in terms of setting the tone at a more mature tone and not juvenile. I do think it works better on that level. But so I mentioned the letter that Cassandra Cain receives from Stephanie Brown, basically saying, it's kind of almost like a suicide note. Like, I'm heading off. I love you. Don't come look for me. Blah, blah, blah. Now we know that at the end of maybe it was last issue or the beginning of last issue, or maybe it was the annual. At some point we saw that Stephanie Brown's father, the Clue Master, had showed up and kidnapped her. So Stephanie reads this letter, and apparently it's in, or Cassandra Cain reads this letter from Stephanie. It's in Stephanie's handwriting. She doesn't buy it for 1 second. And she goes looking for her, and then at the end, she does find her at this cabin, and she's got all these electrodes, it looks like, attached to her, and she's kind of leaning over in the chair, knocked out. So it was a solid issue. Again, it's almost a silent issue in a lot of ways, and I think it works on a lot of levels. Um, and I just, it's night and day the feeling of these books with somebody other than like Jorge Corona or Neil Gouge on art. So I'm enjoying this more, even though there were a few. Again, this is not wouldn't be my favorite choice of artists, but I think it's a step in the right direction. But even though there were a few words in here, I'd rather that there would have been no words at all. But I don't know, maybe they just couldn't figure out how to transition from getting Cassandra from where she was to being in a position to rescue Stephanie Brown. So I guess we'll see. What do you think?
I actually, this was actually, I like this a little better than previous issues. Having said that, I'm not sure how Stephanie Brown got a letter to Cassandra Cain unless the Clue Master delivered the letter.
Yeah, so I think that was the point. The Clue Master, because the letter says, "Don't come looking for me," basically. So I think the Clue Master was, it sent it on her, made her write it and then sent it. Hope he would come look for her. But that doesn't really work. I should have mentioned that. I thought about that too. That doesn't really work for me on any level because the Clue Master is supposed to be smart. The Clue Master would be smart enough to know. You send the letter, that's going to bring people quicker than action. Don't come look for me means they're going to come look even faster than they normally would.
Yeah, but on the other hand, there's a part of me that thinks that Clue Master wants. He's got to know that Cassandra Cain is going to go looking for Stephanie because they're best friends. The Clue Master has got to know that, and so he not only has Stephanie, his daughter, do a letter to Cassandra Cain, but he also sends a map, or he seems to send a sticky note with some clues that Cassandra Cain has to decipher, and and it actually. And to the credit of Clunrad, the writers, Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad, there is a scene where it shows Cassandra Cain actually doing some detective work. Apparently, I don't know, the Clue Master must have written a clue. If 2 Batgirls are company and 3 is a crowd, what are 4 and 5? Well, that's 9. And then, I run around the whole yard without taking a step. Well, that's a fence. So the address of where Stephanie Brown was located was 9 Stone Cabin, or Stone Fence Lane or something, or number 9 Fence Lane. So it's very kind of like very, very simplistic clue, but I guess it's fun. I think it's almost a little bit too simplistic. But, Clue Master, that's why I think Clue Master really wants to be found, or he wants Stephanie. I don't think Clue Master, I can't imagine he wants to kill his daughter Stephanie, or necessarily Stephanie's best friend Cass. But the jury's still out on that. One of the things that I want to give some props to Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad for is that originally it was Michael Bendis who really screwed up in the Young Justice series because he didn't realize that Clue Master was dead, and then he didn't realize that Clue Master was dead, and he wrote that Clue Master was alive, and then the Clue came around, and then they brought Clue Master back, and then they didn't realize he was dead, and so there was some confusion amongst DC editorial offices, and that confusion played out in the stories, and what I like about here we have Cassandra Cain actually in breaking into Gotham Police Headquarters, looking at the coroner's report, and discovers that Clue Master's body went missing, and then she basically blurts out, or it looks like a Lazarus pit likely had something to do with the resurrection of Clue Master. There's actually a page, and where I believe it's Cassandra Cain's handwriting. It says Lazarus on it on the picture of the dead body of Clue Master. So somebody probably resurrected Clue Master. Who knows? But it's at least some explanation for why he's alive. I actually didn't mind the art here. Jonathan Case, he does all the colors on this as well as the lettering in this, which is quite interesting. And I actually kind of I enjoyed it. I'm not necessarily, I was a big fan of pink and yellow, but it it was good here. And I like Lady Shiva showing up, keeping an eye on her daughter. Lady Shiva's not out of this yet. She's keeping an eye on her daughter, making sure she's safe. Lady Shiva literally cutting off the limbs of ninjas. I found that really odd that somehow Cluemaster is hidden, has Stephanie, Cluemaster, these ninjas are, I don't know, why is Cluemaster affiliated with ninjas and they're chasing, it just seemed sort of almost kind of silly. I don't really see Cluemaster having that sort of backup, but it's, this issue was fun. This issue was fun. And I know that's been an attempt that Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad have been trying to do from the beginning, but this is actually the first issue where I actually felt I enjoyed myself more than ever before. And the irony is, frankly, I actually kind of enjoyed the fact that it was more of a silent issue than anything else. So I enjoyed this more, although I will say, again, I want to continue to criticize the cover A's, which I just think continue to be some of the worst on the stands, quite frankly. The cover A's on this title. Definitely, if you're going to be buying an issue of Batgirls, you're buying cover B or C. That I can virtually guarantee, because in any event, not bad. Better than normal.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if is Jonathan Case going to be the regular artist? Because again, I feel like in tone, it's a step up, and he is a solid storyteller, as evidenced by this mostly silent issue. But it's still not in the DC House style. And again, maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But you just expect a certain style of art with Bat books. This doesn't have that.
Yeah.
Although the next book does in a lot of ways. It's Batman Fortress number 8, which is the final issue. It's written by Gary Whitta. Art is by Derek Robertson. Colors by Diego Rodriguez. Letters by Simon Boland. I wondered how they were going to wrap this all up in only one issue with Superman barely being found. I actually really enjoyed this. I thought it didn't go the way that I thought it would. This whole series, it did not go the way that I thought it would have. And I definitely could see the argument to have a couple more issues, because we get some time jumps in the last little part of the story here. It works. It's not as bad as some others, like Brian Bendis, where we talked about it a lot with his Justice League run, where you'd get people talking about what happened, between one page and the next. One page, we have to go do this. And then the next page you come back and they've already gone and done it, the most exciting part of the story. And they're just talking about what just happened instead of showing us. The parts here that we need to be shown aren't the most important parts of the story. And you'll see what I mean when we get into sort of dissecting it. So I think in that way that it worked, but I still think, maybe it's just because I enjoyed this so much, that I could have done with another issue or two. But I'll talk a little bit more about some specifics, but I want to give you a chance to go first, Rocky. So what'd you think of this?
Honestly, I was a little bit kind of underwhelmed, but then I've been increasingly underwhelmed from issue to issue. I thought the best issue of this entire series was the very first issue, because I love the attack of the aliens in Justice League. I just love that opening issue. I thought it was really good. But since then, I've had a hard time really getting behind these characters that Gary Whitta has chosen for this particular story. They were definitely different characters. Jackson Hyde, Red Arrow, Gnort. Was that Gnort? Yeah. The Green Lantern.
It's
what is that?
Dale.
Dale. Green, and then even the Lex Luthor. I guess going with the goofy Lex Luthor, President of the United States. That had its moments. That was, I guess, kind of funny. It was clearly out of continuity, so I go with it because, I mean, let's face it, it's out of continuity. He can do whatever he wants, and again, it's not bad. It ends with the ending really surprised me. And that's why you definitely know it's out of continuity. Superman essentially giving up his powers as a way of satisfying the alien race, because they wanted to destroy Superman, because they blame Krypton and his Jor-El and Krypton for destroying many of their home worlds, et cetera, et cetera. And so Superman willingly gives up his powers, and if he gives up his powers, they won't kill him, and he does so. But they did so in such a way that they could, as long as Kal-El, son of Jor-El, doesn't have superpowers, that's okay. And it ends up with the powers being given to Batman. So this really literally ends with Batman having the superpowers that were normally for Superman, and that's how it ends. And a nice little reference to the Christopher Reeve movies. Lex Luthor ends up dying in this issue to the satisfaction of everyone reading it because he's kind of a jerk. And the fate of Lex Luthor is kind of comical how it happens here. And Otis literally becomes president of the United States. So I actually enjoyed that. That made me laugh out loud. So kudos to Gary Whitta. Gary Whitta straight up, he made some very, very odd choices for who he chose to write and include in this story that I still kind of question whether it really works, but I don't think there's been a DC story told in the last 20 years that has this much of an eclectic array of players to take out an alien threat. And it worked though. He got me. There was some misdirection, and it completely ended in a way that I did not see coming. I did not see Superman making the choice he did, nor with Batman ending up how he did, or for that matter, Otis becoming president of the United States. So, as I'm talking to you, I'm feeling better about it. I think maybe I just need to. I think maybe I was just too serious. I need to lighten up because this is almost more of a belly laugh kind of series a little bit, like have a little fun with it. And if you're going to be picking up this series of Batman Fortress, just remember it's out of continuity. Have fun with it. Forget what you think you know about Batman or Superman or Lex Luthor or Green Lantern, the Green Lantern Corps, and forget what you think you know about Luthor in particular, and you'll enjoy it a lot more. And it does have its moments.
Yeah, I think it had a lot of moments, and to your point, like I get why you might feel that way. In terms of the story structure for this series, it was sort of built backwards, right? Like usually a series will start off kind of slow, and that's what I mean about maybe there could have been room for a couple more issues, right? Like instead of the Justice League attacking the invading force and being overwhelmed and Superman going to look for Batman, like that was built, like it built to that, right? Like it built to the attack, and then they were defeated over the course of issues, and then it slows down and Batman goes looking for Superman, and then you expect more action at the end when they fight, right? But it was front loaded with action, and then it ends up being the twist at the end that I saw coming. Like I thought it actually would have happened sooner when all this invading force, we know they're there to basically take out Superman because the House of L, and it's reiterated in detail in this issue, the House of L was most responsible for kind of the fascist conquering nature of this version of Krypton that exists in this corner of the DCU, this reality, this multiverse, what have you. So they're going to take out the last member of the House of L, even though he was a baby at the time, didn't have anything to do with that, is irrelevant. And I almost expected Superman to say sooner, okay, I'll go with you, not because he thinks he's guilty, not because he thinks he should, but just because it's Superman and he's willing to sacrifice himself to make sure. I mean, the whole reason he was in hiding, and I don't know, maybe you mentioned this, Rocky, and I missed it. The whole reason he was in hiding is because he knew that they were coming, and he went into hiding to prevent himself from even being detected by them, and he was hoping that they would just leave, that the people would believe that he was no longer on Earth. These hunters would just leave, because he knew if he battled them, they're so powerful, it would be catastrophic destruction on the planet. So every choice he's making is very Superman-like, even though this is out of continuity. So I expected him to give up sooner, but he does give up relatively soon, and he tells Batman, no, I'm going to go with them because this is not what I want. Whether they're right, whether they're wrong, to persecute me, this will save lives. This will save destruction. This will, be Superman making the sacrifice. And then Batman comes up with the compromise, or maybe it's Superman comes up with a compromise, a la Superman 2, just like in World's Finest, where we talked about removing the powers from David. Superman agrees to give up his powers. What we don't know, and we don't see that. Then we get the jump ahead. Like we don't see Superman go to the planet because one of the bounty hunters, whatever you call it, that's coming to capture Superman, says, I can't make that decision. You have to go before the tribunal, and they can decide if that's enough for you to give up your superpowers. And so we don't see that. We just know that when Superman comes back, he's just Clark Kent. He's no longer Superman at all. And then what we learned further as he's talking to Batman, he's talking to Bruce Wayne, he didn't just give up his powers and have them just go away. No, the machine had the ability to transfer the powers. So he's transferred them to Bruce because he thinks that Bruce is worthy, basically. And that's an interesting idea. But just so Gary Whitta can, throw us a bone and tell us, hey, maybe there's more story to be told in this universe, we get the end of the story, the last page and a half, I guess you'd say, with Superman flying above Earth, and his emblem has changed a little bit. It's the kind of pentagon, triangular shaped Superman symbol, but instead of an S inside, it's a bat. Yeah. And his belt, and it's red and black, and then his belt has an oval with the bat symbol, but the oval is red. So a little bit of to Superman. And he talks about how he doesn't intend to be bound by the same oath not to interfere with human history, right? If anybody knows the burden that Clark held, it's Superman, right? But he's not. He's like, I'm not Superman. Like, I'm going to be proactive. I'm not going to abdicate the responsibility and sit on the sidelines. I'm going to actively try to make the world a better place. So, I mean, this sounds a little megalomaniacal in a way. Like, Batman now has the ability to, like, go around and destroy all the nuclear weapons, or go take out Black Adam, or do all these things that, Clark was always a little more hands off. Like, you have to be an example and lead, but you cannot make the decisions for them. Batman, maybe not that way. Maybe a little more like Lex than he might realize. Lex, who doesn't survive the issue, and that was awesome as well, because he tried to portray everybody, and the beings that are there to capture Superman are like, yeah, if there's anything that we hate more than Kryptonians, it's traitors. So, in trying to save himself, Luthor dooms himself. That was a fantastic moment. So I really enjoyed this. I almost enjoyed it more so for the ambiguous ending and the fact of what could come next. Like, now you could even have a story where Clark is somehow trying to get his powers back, or leading a resistance against Batman, against Bruce, decades down the road, because Bruce is overstepping with his powers. Like, it's a fine line, it's a fine line. Like, there are times where I think, man, if I had the powers of Superman, I would do this, I would do this, I would do this. Maybe who has the right to make all those decisions, right? Like, I get that you want to save lives, but there are gray areas there, right? Like, should you go destroy all nuclear weapons? Should you be, doing this, doing that? I mean, it's easy to say I'm going to feed the people that are hungry. I don't think anybody would argue against that. But, if you're crossing into other countries and sort of going against their sovereign rights, there are no easy answers, despite what Batman thinks. But I thought this was fantastic. Plenty of irreverent lines and humor in it from Gary Whitta, and the Derek Robertson art, I think, was solid throughout. Very much, sort of that DC house style in a lot of ways. So I thought this was great.
Yeah, no, it makes people, it makes you think. It makes you think, and it does something provocative. And it has a beginning, a middle, and a controversial ending. And it makes you wonder, Batman as Superman, is that more of a problem? Is the problem more significant than the solution? Or is it worse than the solution? Maybe those aliens will regret the deal they made. But, I don't, we'll have to see. Maybe we'll get a Batman Fortress 2 coming out, or I guess Super Batman, or Super whatever he is now.
But yeah, I mean, who knows? Who knows? Okay, up next we have Stargirl, The Lost Children. This is issue 3. I could swear it's only issue 2, but I guess we saw the first one where it kind of introduced to some people, and then second one they traveled to the island and sort of crash landed. Stargirl. And so now we have the third issue. Jeff Johns is the writer, Todd Knock is the artist, Matt Herms on colors, Rob Lee on letters. we see the childminder for the first time. Amiko has been captured. Stargirl gets, I guess, sort of rescued or at least acquainted with some of the sidekicks we know have been missing since World War II, Wing and Airwave and Cherry Bomb. And she gets taken to their lair, as it were, their hideout. And we find out there's a lot more than just the 13 that we were told about, right? The 13 that had the Who's Who pages. I mean, there are a ton of kids down here that have been missing, that have sort of been erased from DC history, from Golden Age history, whether it's, Little Miss Redhead or the newspaper, or Newsboy Legion, rather. TikTok. I mean, a lot of the ones that we have seen, but it just seems like there's a lot more than just 13 here. And then Corky Baxter shows up and says, "Hey, if you ask me nicely, I'll tell you guys, what happened and how to rescue you." And we see like I said, we see the Childminder for the first time, but don't really know who she is because she has this freaky mask on. Maybe that's to hide her age. I don't know. But then at the end, there's an awesome full page splash from Todd Knock with Judy Garrick, son of the Golden Age Flash, who we'd never heard of before Flashpoint Beyond, I guess. She says, "I'm the boom in the thunder, and I need your help getting back to my parents. They got to be worried sick by now." So that's the thing. Like, time must pass much, 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 much slower on this island because these kids don't realize that it's been decades and decades that they've been missing. So, again, not sure exactly where Jeff Johns is going with this, but this is so much fun, and they could not have picked a better artist. When you want to mix the idea of like classic Silver Age feel with traditional superhero art and give it a youthful quality with really good storytelling, great facial expressions, great character design. Like Todd Knock, he is just perfect, absolutely perfect. And it's all summed up by just look at that last page. There's so many times when we get the sidekicks on the panels, on the pages, and behind them you see almost like a transparent version of their mentor, right? So when Judy Garrick is running on this treadmill, you see Jay Garrick behind her. When Corky Baxter's sitting there, you see Rip Hunter there next to him. He's not really there, it's just to give context for somebody who may not know who these other characters are. Same thing when TikTok shows up. So I thought the art was fantastic. It's an easy read. I mean, it's very much tied in with DC continuity, but at the same time, I feel like you could pick up the Stargirl after school special, read that, and then you wouldn't even have to read Flashpoint Beyond. You could just go from the Stargirl special right into this, and you there's enough there that you don't need Flashpoint Beyond. Flashpoint Beyond adds to it, but it's not necessary. And I haven't watched any of the Stargirl TV shows, so I can't speak to whether or not watching that would give you enough context for this. But I imagine so, because this feels pretty new reader friendly. So what were your thoughts on it?
Wow, I'm Jeff Johns, man. He's bitten so much off, and I was gonna say, can he, did he bite off more than he can chew? Well, I tell you what, he's got a full mouth, but he seems to be digesting it fairly well, and I cannot believe the absolute unbelievable number of characters that we are introduced in this issue, and we are told we're introduced to all of them, and it actually feels that we're kind of getting to know them, and that's insane because the number of characters we got: Wing, Airwave, Cherry Bomb, Robbie, Little Miss Redhead, Newsboy Legion, Big Words, Flip, Famous Bobby, Scrapper, Tommy, TikTok, Corky Baxter, of course, the Childminder, also known as this Childminder. Who is the Childminder? Well, we don't know, but we know that Childminder refers to herself, and some of the other people refer to her. Some of the other children refer to her as the scavenger of the timeline, the angel to history's forgotten. And the caregiver of children's futures. The childminder takes it upon herself, almost like she feels like she's protecting the children. She's protecting them from the future. She's protecting them from something. Childminder also works for somebody, and we don't really know who that is. This Childminder, she doesn't appear to be evil. She seems to care for the children, but who does she work for? Does she work for Per Degaton? And if she does, why would Per Degaton not kill the children, if he wants to destroy the legacy of the JSA, then why would you know, why are these children on this island called Orphan Island? Why it seems to be very odd. We discover and are told through the story that the Our Man's sidekick by the name of TikTok was the very first inhabitant of Orphan Island, and that's one of the reasons why apparently Orphan Island's the sand on Orphan Island is made up of Miraclo pills or Miraclo dust, which is the thing which is the ingredient which gives Our Man his enhanced strength and abilities. And we also see Corky Baxter. We saw Corky Baxter in Flashpoint Beyond. He's the sort of the sidekick of one of the sidekicks amongst the Time Masters, and he knows that something's amiss. We know that a lot of the lost children don't seem to realize or appreciate that when they return and get off Orphan Island, they're not going to be returned to their own time. There's a sense of tragedy about this, that these kids really are lost, and even if they're returned, they're going to be returning to a world that they don't recognize. And that's extraordinary, but maybe some of them can be returned to their own time. Will some of them be returned to the 1940s? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not really sure here. But we know that Quiz Kid, the sidekick to Mr. Terrific, he reasons that that Stargirl must be from the future. And he views it as the future. But you got to wonder if this Orphan Island, is this Orphan Island displaced in its own bubble of space and time? When these children are returned, are they going to be returned to their own timeline? Or are they all going to end up in modern day Earth Zero? We don't know. Who's the villain behind this? Who's the person that the childminder is working for? Who's caring for these children for? What happened to Per Degaton? How does he play into all of this? And Judy Garrick, who was the long lost daughter of Jay Garrick, does she realize that Jay Garrick, her parents, don't even remember her? That's a tragedy in and of itself. There's so much potential tragedy here. We got to remember why Red Arrow, Amiko, was so emotionally intent and motivated to find these lost children, as she'd explained last issue, because she knows what it feels like to be an orphan and feel forgotten about, when she was forgotten about on the island where Green Arrow learned his skills as an archer. He didn't realize that she was on that island as well, and she was forgotten. And you know, there's a sense of joy and happiness looking at all these kids, but at the same time, when you reflect upon the stories that we know to be playing out, there's a sense of potential tragedy and darkness there. And Jeff Johns has done just an amazing job doing this. And just, you know, between Jeff Johns, all these new players coming in with Stargirl, The Lost Children, the new characters we're getting in the JSA, the new characters we're getting through Mark Waid, through World's Finest, and through Lazarus Planet, with these new characters coming in affected by the volcanic Lazarus explosion. We're getting new characters, and this really is, it feels like a dawn of the DCU, and I still feel so optimistic about the DCU moving forward. And Stargirl, The Lost Children, I'm so glad that this is a comic book that sort of feels like it's at the forefront of that.
Yeah, and what he's building, again, we're not sure how long it's going to last. We're not 100% sure, but man, we're sure going to enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
Okay, up next we have Monkey Prince number 10. The Monkey King and I, Part 2 of 4, from writer Jean Luen Yang. Bernard Chang is the artist. Marcelo Maiello on colors. Wes Abbott on letters. We saw last issue that the Monkey Prince met up with Supergirl, who he clearly has a huge crush on. That's probably the most fun aspect of this issue, is just Marcus's kind of feeble attempts at flirting with her. And this ties in very much with the Lazarus Island event. So we know that Monkey Prince himself is going to play a big role, and we've already seen some hints of that in the Lazarus Island event. And so while Monkey Prince and Supergirl are fighting against the Ultra Humanite here, the Lazarus rain starts to fall. It affects Monkey Prince, and then all of a sudden he's manifesting these little mini Monkey Princes from his follicles of his hair, trying to figure out what's going on with that. The rain almost seems to have like a kryptonite-like effect on Supergirl because she starts losing her powers. We're also shown that it's the Monkey Prince's grandfather. It's Marcus's grandfather. Apparently, that is the Ultra Humanite, or maybe it's more accurate to say the Ultra Humanite has taken over Marcus's grandfather's body. I don't think Marcus's grandfather is there at all anymore. But his parents, he's still pretending to be Marcus's mother's father, and they're both there in kind of his mother's still in like this like a Luke Skywalker medical chamber, from Empire Strikes Back, like floating in the liquid or whatever. His father's in much better shape, but that adds another dynamic to it. We've talked a lot in this series about how Marcus is going to feel about learning that his parents are basically super villains, mad scientists. So there's a lot going on in this issue. None of it's really resolved. It feels like you do get a decent chunk of story. I'm just wondering, with only 2 issues of this left, how that ties in with the end of Lazarus Planet. I mean, I guess Lazarus Planet is going to be over by the end of March, because it's we're getting chapters every week as opposed to Monkey Prince. We're just getting once a month. So I applaud these creators for creating something fun, again, that introduces a lot of people to mythologies they probably aren't familiar with. Certainly the case with myself, with all this Chinese lore and mythology. And they're doing a good job of incorporating Marcus into the greater DCU. But I will say the fact that just about every issue has a guest star, it starts to feel a little bit forced, just a little, kind of like back in the 90s whenever a news launched, whether it be, Ghost Rider or Spider-Man or Wolverine or whatever, you could always count on like 3 crossovers, right? Like, so when the Spider-Man title started, you could always count on in the first 10 issues that Punisher would show up, Wolverine would show up, and Ghost Rider would show up. Because in the early 90s, those were Marvel's 3 most popular characters, with Spider-Man coming in fourth. Wolverine was number 1, and Punisher was number 2, and Ghost Rider was number 3. And so they would show up in the beginning of any series that launched, because you wanted people that were fans of them to follow it over. Oh, I'm going to go try this news. Oh, Wolverine showing up in the new Spider-Man series. Let me go over and check it out. Oh, now I want to start collecting Spider-Man, or what have you. So it feels a little forced. But again, it's a minor nitpick, and I think overall it's a really fun series. And I'm no better way to put the best foot forward for Monkey Prince and to try to get as many eyes on him as possible, in my mind, than putting him as a main character in this Lazarus event, Planet Lazarus, or Lazarus Planet. Because, I was really impressed with the first issue. As much as I was like, magic users, well, not for me. But yeah, Mark Waid did such a good job. And if you're curious about our thoughts and you didn't listen to last week's episode, I encourage you to go listen to it. And we'll talk about this week's Lazarus Planet tie-in here in a second. But give us your thoughts on Monkey Prince first.
I actually think that this is an enjoyable tie-in to Lazarus Planet Alpha. Now, we reviewed Lazarus Planet Alpha. It came out last week. The events of this comic takes place before Lazarus Planet Alpha. And because Monkey Prince and his mythology and his origins do play a significant role in the Lazarus Planet storyline, quite frankly, I think that I would recommend that people pick this up. This isn't a complicated comic to understand. In fact, just this one issue is easy to understand. All you really need to know is that at right before it starts to rain, the Lazarus rain from the volcanic eruption on Lazarus Island, right before that rain starts coming down, Supergirl is in a battle against the Ultra Humanite, battling the Ultra Humanite. Her and Monkey Prince are battling his grandpa Gerard, who is sort of the mind of Ultra Humanite, or vice versa. I'm a little bit unclear on that. Oh, that's really, frankly, unimportant. And as they're defeating Ultra Humanite, that's when the rain hits. Supergirl loses her powers, and Monkey Prince sort of helps her out. And they fly around Metropolis. They see all the chaos. They see the rain causing people to have powers and superpowers and not, and all the chaos from the rain. And ultimately, they make it to the Hall of Justice, where Supergirl calls in an emergency meeting to all the heroes around the world, and it ends with Power Girl, Zatanna, Blue Devil, Mary Marvel, Blue Beetle, and Cyborg showing up, and they ultimately end up going to going toward the Tower of Fate, where they ultimately end up releasing all the magic bearers of the DC universe, which happens in Lazarus Planet Alpha. So everything fits here. And in particular, one of the things that happens is that although Ultra Humanite is defeated, Grandpa Gerard, who is controlling the Ultra Humanite, he basically he discovers that the rain seems to repair his he was fighting, he was using, as the Ultra Humanite, he was shooting a cannon at Supergirl, and he noted that the rain repaired his cannon. So the rain doesn't just bestow magic powers or science-based powers and mixes up powers on all established metahumans. It creates new metahumans, and it can also have an impact on actual machinery, and it repairs the crystalline battery in the cannon that his grandpa has, and it also repairs a crystalline lens that his grandfather is going to be using to repair his Phantom Zone projector to try to release the ancient monkey god from the Phantom Zone to serve the Ultra Humanite. So that's interesting. I had no idea. This is obviously new continuity. I had no idea that there was a monkey god that was trapped in the Phantom Zone. But I suspect that this might very well play into the Lazarus Planet storyline. And so, again, another reason for people to maybe pick this up. I think it's accessible enough that people can get the gist of this story, because I think it's potentially some major revelations. And it helps with the flow of Lazarus Planet overall. I'm going to have some comments as we get into review of Lazarus Planet Assault on Krypton in a moment, because there are some significant criticisms that can be laid into the way the editorial structured this event. But in any event, I would recommend that this issue be bought because I think it's enjoyable.
Yeah, I agree. I think all along there's been a kind of a fun, irreverent feel to Monkey Prince, and I know it's new and it's kind of different, but I don't think that's a reason not to pick it up. In fact, I would say it's a reason to pick it up. Here's a new DC character you can get in on the ground floor, and and learn everything you need to know with this series. So, okay, up next we have Nightwing 100, written by Tom Taylor. Bruno Redondo's the main artist, but we also have art from Scott McDaniel, Rick Leonardi, Eddie Barrows, Javier Fernandez, and Mikel Yanin. And if you're not familiar, a lot of those artists are recent and classic artists on the Nightwing title, over the years. Certainly the Chuck Dixon, Scott McDaniel run is a classic from the 90s. We also have Carl Story, Iber Ferreira, Caio Felipe, Joe Prado, and Rick Leonardi handling the inks. Adriano Lucas does the colors, Wes Abbott on the letters. I never at any point thought that we would be getting a wedding in Nightwing 100. I don't know where that rumor or idea came from. So if you're hoping for a wedding, you're going to be disappointed. But I would say to that, and I talked about it before when we had the episode or the issue where Barbara and Dick were in that cabin in the woods, as it were, Bruce Wayne's safe house in the woods. And there was mention of a wedding. And I said, man, I just think we'd hear more buildup. It hasn't been mentioned at all. And so, again, if you listened to the rumors and got yourself excited, it's kind of on you. At no point did DC ever mention it or hint at it, in my opinion. So that's not what we get. What we get is Heartless showing up at the run-for-profit prison in Bloodhaven, and he breaks out all of the villains, all the prisoners, and in true Dick Grayson inspirational way, he actually manages to appeal to some of the prisoners to take off their Heartless masks and actually help with Bloodhaven, help with this prison break. It's like, yeah, I know some of you didn't deserve to be in there. You were in there just because you couldn't pay some stupid fine, or you unjustly imprisoned, and we all need to be here together to make a better Bloodhaven. And to his credit, a lot of these guys do kind of lay down there, and they're like, wait, what happens next? He's like, well, then you go on your way. So I don't want to say he's bribing them. He's appealing to their better nature, but they also have the incentive of they're getting their freedom too. So it's not maybe 100% altruistic on their part, but Along with that, he does also have the Titans show up to help him. The Titans, who are apparently going to have Bloodhaven as their new headquarters, because at the end he uses the Pennyworth Foundation to buy the abandoned, damaged prison, razes it to the ground, and erects a new Titans Tower. So apparently, Titans Tower is going to be in Bloodhaven now. Now, the other aspect of that, the other side of the coin, is that Superman and Wonder Woman show up and say, "Hey, we want you to lead the replacement for the Justice League. Justice League's been disbanded ever since the death of the Justice League and the events of Dark Crisis, and with how Nightwing stepped up during Dark Crisis, they feel like it's time for something different, and so they're charging the Titans with protecting the planet rather than the Justice League. So whether or not that makes sense, it could be argued. You could just recruit all these same characters and call it the Justice League. I think there's some, I don't want to say cachet, but there's some like legacy there, right? Like the citizens of Earth in the DC universe, they expect there to be a Justice League. So the fact that there's not one, I don't know that really works. I mean, just speaking from personal experience, I don't give the same weight to the Titan, the name Titans, as I do the Justice League. But I don't know. They want a different sort of status quo, whether that's within the DCU or DC editorial. I guess we could make that argument, but a solid issue. It definitely, I think, is worthy of being Nightwing 100 from Tom Taylor. It certainly has the feel. There's plenty of character moments, including one toward the end between Dick and Bruce, and them talking about how it's kind of touchy feely, almost corny at times. Bruce is saying how Dick saved him from becoming too dark in his earliest days as Batman, and Dick's saying what a great father he was, and he wouldn't have been, he wouldn't have gone that way and gone too dark and that sort of thing. But yeah, definitely has that classic Tom Taylor feel, plenty of emotion. But yeah, like I said, worthy of being Nightwing 100 and a solid issue. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, look, this is a nice capping off of frankly Tom Taylor's run. Now he's not done writing it. That's not what I mean. What I'm getting at is the characterization that Tom Taylor has given Nightwing and the few times that Batman has showed up, in particular this issue, and Barbara Gordon. It's been very consistent. The writing has, frankly, it's been excellent. This has been an enjoyable series. Now, the plotting has been very, very simplistic. There hasn't been a lot of a great sophistication in the plot, but quite frankly, that's not what the majority of fans want. And because this is a feel-good comic, and this Nightwing had a hell of a good year in 2022, and even though Dark Crisis was a disappointment to me, the fact of the matter is, had Dark Crisis been advertised differently, it really was a Nightwing story. Dark Crisis was part of Nightwing's journey to this moment that takes place in this comic, where he stepped up to the plate and the world took notice. And I think symbolic of the world is the Trinity itself, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, approaching him and saying, look, we want you to lead because you're ready. And because right now the JLA is disbanding. Now, I could sit here and nitpick, and legitimately so, frankly, and say, why, just when Nightwing is finally starting to improve Bloodhaven, he's doing so many wonderful things, now they're going to burden him with protecting the planet? I mean, Batman, you lazy bastard, what's your problem? Why don't you do it like you always have, or Superman or Wonder Woman? I mean, really, what's the big deal? But I mean, I'm kind of making a little bit of a joke out of it, but frankly, this feels like the dawn of a DC. It is the dawn of a DCU, and this is the art here is fantastic. There is something about Dick Grayson and this moment that just feels right. I like the fact that the Titans. There's even a few moments in here where I thought where at the beginning Dick Grayson talks about I'm being asked to leap. And I know where I'm going to land, because he talks about in a lot of the flashbacks. There's a great there's a great sequence where he talks about how I've always taken leaps in the past, never knowing where I would land, and it shows a callback to the original Nightwing, the way he appeared in his first appearance in Tales of the New Teen Titans, Tales of the New Teen Titans number 42, and then the way he's evolved as a character through all his iterations. It shows that sequence. So instead of having a bunch of offhand sort of like poster pictures of Nightwing, it shows different iterations as Nightwing is reflecting on his past. He's reflecting on how he's looked, and it's a great callback and a tribute issue to how far Nightwing has come to this moment where he successfully holds off Heartless. He deals with a prison break. He converts the prison into a new Titans tower, and he does so with the help of his friends, who ultimately, his friends, just like him, are also elevated because they become the Titans. And this is recognized by the Trinity. This really is sort of a passing of the torch, and not so much that the Trinity is going anywhere, but it's acknowledging just how amazing these other characters are that we've grown up with. And, frankly, with George Perez dying last year, one of his lasting legacies with his collaboration with Marv Wolfman was the new Teen Titans. And the idea of Starfire, Wally West Flash, Cyborg, Donna Troy, Beast Boy, Raven, forming the Titans. They're the new Justice League, in a sense, the de facto Justice League. There's something about it that just feels right. I can criticize the logic of it and maybe the verisimilitude a little bit, but I love these characters. I grew up with them. I love them, and I can't help but to, again, I love the character work here. Is there a lot of character evolution? Not necessarily, but there's a lot of character work. Tom Taylor knows these characters, and I think that there is some evolution of the character of Batman as well. And once again, we're moving away from the Frank Miller Batman to more touchy-feely Batman. But that's a great moment where he says, "I love you, Dad." A great moment between Dick and Batman. And anyways, I enjoyed this. Yeah, it was good. Again, if you've loved it this far, you're gonna love this issue.
So not disappointed there was no wedding?
I did mention that I did a little bit of I would have liked the wedding. I think it would have been but I understand why DC didn't do it. But I think it would have been marketing gold had they done it, because that would have been misdirection, and I think it would have been I think it would have made fans super happy. And but of course they're DC. They want to advertise the hell out of it, and they'll want to make that 50 issues, and they're gonna. I get it. I get the logic of it, but I would have liked to see the wedding.
I would love it as a surprise as well. Remember, that's how comics used to be. You used to get surprises.
Exactly.
But there's no way. I mean, that's such a big deal, the wedding of Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon, that they wouldn't want to have, record-breaking sales that they could point to, as opposed to if they had sprung it on everybody, like said nothing in the solicits about a marriage, and it's still Nightwing 100, so retailers are still going to order more copies than they normally would, but still nowhere near the copies they would have ordered had a wedding taken place. It would have actually been, you would have saw it on Bleeding Cool, and it would have been on eBay going for $50 or whatever. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, but.
Yeah, I just want to give one shout out to, there's a wonderful page. It's my favorite page because I used to collect Teen Titans Go. I got every issue I got doubles of Teen Titans Go series. And there's a page where Nightwing with the Titans behind him saying Titans Go. So I perceive that as a callback to Teen Titans Go, just the cartoon. And so even they got a little bit of a de facto shout out, and I just puts a smile on my face.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Lazarus Planet Assault on Krypton is up next. There's a few stories in here. There's a Dreamer story. It's written by Nicole Maines. Art is by Skylar Patridge. Colors by Nick Filardi. Letters by World's Morgan Martinez. The second story in the issue is a Superboy story, a John Kent, Superman, John Kent Superman story that leads into his adventures of Superman John Kent #1. It's written by C.S. Pacat. Art is by Scott Godlewski. Colors are by Alex Guarmez, and letters are by World Design. And then the last story is a Lex Luthor story. Well, maybe more accurate to say a Mercy story. And that one is written by Frank Barbieri. Pencils by Sami Basri, inks by Sami Basri and Vicente Fuentes, and colors by Hi-Fi with Dave Sharp on letters. I guess that's the second to last because I almost forgot. I don't know how because it's my favorite one. Um, the final story is written by Leah Williams, art by Marguerite Sauvage, letters by Becca Carey, and obviously Marguerite Sauvage, as she often does her own color work as well. So I guess let's trade off going. I'll go first on the first one, and then you can go first on the second, and so forth.
Okay.
So the Dreamer story I enjoyed. It's all about probably the one that ties most into Lazarus Planet. It's all about Dreamer trying to get the Helmet of Fate, find out where it is. We learn that Khalid Nassar is his consciousness is sort of buried because he lost his fight with the demon Nezha. The heroes want to find out where the Helmet of Fate is. Now, I thought that the Helmet of Fate, I thought Batman had it. He was wearing it during Batman versus Robin, but I guess apparently he lost it. And they need to find out where it is to restore all the magic to all the other artifacts that Nezha obtained and then drained, used Black Alice to drain the magical power from all those artifacts and imbue it into the helmet. So they want to return that power to sort of help stabilize the magic of the DC. And Dreamer's the one who's going to go and try to find Khalid by finding his dreams, by finding him while he's dreaming, and then sort of figure things out from there. So I thought the art was really solid. Nicole Maines, who, if you don't know, she played Dreamer on I think it was Supergirl TV show, one of the CW TV shows
Yeah.
where
Supergirl.
made her debut. So I like Dreamer as a character. She's kind of a modern version of Dream Girl from the Legion of Superheroes, if you're familiar with that character. So I'm really impressed with this. It's well paced. It's well written. The art by Skylar Patridge is really solid. I particularly enjoy her rendition of Supergirl with kind of the high collar. She has sort of a longer neck. I don't know. I really like her artistic style. So, and her characterization for both Damian and Bruce, Bruce is at the Hall of Justice in the medical bay, all jacked up from the events of Batman versus Robin. So I thought it worked really, really well. I was pretty impressed. What'd you think?
Well, I first Skylar Patridge's art. I like it. I think though I don't know. She must have done her own inks because I liked her art better when she was doing the backups in the Wonder Woman story on leading in the Trial of the Amazons. I don't know if she had somebody else ink her art, but it's not as good as I remember it in those backups. But it's still good. It's still good. I first of all. I have to criticize the title to this. Why is this called Lazarus Planet Assault on Krypton?
Yeah,
there's nothing in this comic book that has to do with Krypton, other than the fact that Supergirl's in it, and John Kent's in it. They're from Krypton.
Well,
this has nothing to do with Krypton. They have
the only thing, and this is not a defense, but it might explain why. So we know that in the upcoming Action Comics, we're getting a Power Girl. There's going to be 3 storylines going, 3 separate. It's almost an anthology. Get Superman, we get Power Girl, and we get Dan Jurgens. Who's Dan Jurgens doing again?
Well, you mean Lois and Clark? He's doing the
Lois and Clark. Yeah, that's right, Lois and Clark. So he's doing Superman as well, but it's kind of a throwback. So Leah Williams is writing the Power Girl, and so if you are a Superman fan, and then also we're getting the John Kent Adventures of Superman John Kent series. So if you're a Superman fan and you're going to be reading those Adventures of John Kent, you're going to read in Action Comics. Maybe they put the word Krypton in the title of this because it has a couple of stories in here that tie into that. That's the only thing. Again, it's not an excuse and it's not a good reason, but that's the only reason that I can think of.
Yeah, well, it does say at the beginning that and I understand what you're saying, and I'm not yelling at you, Jace. I'm just saying that I still think it's inexcusable. It's got nothing to do with Assault on Krypton. They say there at the beginning it says long ago on the planet Krypton, during the time of the prophet Japhal, a great golden volcanic eruption clouded the skies and led to a flood of planetary scope. And over the course of generations, Kryptonians called this called it the assault on Krypton. And what does that have to do? Now we can get from that this is something similar to what happened on Krypton. Is this volcanic eruption on Earth similar to what happened on Krypton? Okay, but why is this particular compilation of stories called Assault on Krypton? It's got nothing to do with it. And this first story, getting right into it with Dreamer, I didn't mind it. The Fate, the Dr. Fate's helmet was actually destroyed. It was shattered. That was part of the problem. That's what actually led to the destruction in the volcano. It was part of. It was actually shattered in the battle between Batman and the demon Nezha and King Bullfire. But it's apparently probably reformed itself. So I'm not really sure. Now Dreamer comes along and she basically wants to try to find Khalid Nasser. And she wants to. The helmet is apparently sort of like comatose and sleeping. And because Dream Girl or Dreamer, sorry, can access dreams when you're sleeping, she sort of ultimately tries to find this helmet of Naboo, and there's a voice talking to her and guiding her. Who's the voice? Who's behind the voice? We don't know, but Dreamer foolishly touches the helmet of Fate in the dream state, and she ends up getting absorbed by it because it's probably because this helmet of Naboo has been infected by Lazarus Island, infected by the Lazarus resin, and so the helmet of Naboo is probably doesn't operate how it normally does. So what's the fate of Dreamer? We don't know, but we know that upon her touching it, she's been essentially sort of absorbed by it. The impact that will have, we don't know, but it'll be interesting to see moving forward. So then there's the following issue, which you can talk about if you regarding Super or John Kent.
Yeah. So John Kent meets this guy Ash, who's out there during the Lazarus rainfall, looting constantly, and apparently the rain is affecting John as well, and has some sort of electrical discharge. At the same time, this guy manifests some lava-like powers, and he actually takes John Kent back to his apartment. Said he didn't want to leave him laying out there, and then as more and more things are going on, John has to go out there and sort of stem the tide of chaos. He takes this guy along with him, and then the guy pretends to lose his powers at a later time, but actually what he was doing was getting John to basically leave him alone because John was keeping an eye on him. Let me bring you along with all these fires that I'm trying to put out, all these catastrophes I'm trying to help with that are being caused by the Lazarus rain. So I can keep an eye on you. And so the guy pretends to lose his powers and gets taken to the Metropolis police station. And then as soon as John leaves, he breaks out, goes and steals John's cape because apparently it's electrified from the electrical discharge that John Kent had. And the guy, I mean, he doesn't seem like he's all bad, but he's not all good either. I mean, he certainly helps John in a lot of instances while he's out there trying to help other people. So I think the guy, his name's Ash, and he's very much just out for himself. But there's also some like romantic overtones, I'd say. Ash seems to have
he's flirting with him. Ash seems to flirt with him a bit.
Yeah. And John doesn't shut him down. He doesn't seem, completely unreceptive to it, which is interesting because he has a boyfriend. But yeah, I think it's Tom Taylor setting up a little, maybe like a Batman Catwoman kind of thing a little bit. There's some sort of physical attraction between the two, but John makes it clear that what you're doing is not okay, dude. You're out there breaking the law. You're committing crimes. You're stealing. You're looting. It's not okay. So, I mean, it was fine. I despite him being very selfish and self-centered, I kind of liked the character Ash. He was kind of a fun character, like because he's the thing about him that came across to me was he's so unrepentant about who he is, right? Like, yeah, I know I'm breaking the law, but this is me, it's what I am. It's what I do. So kind of got a kick out of that. So,
yeah.
And I thought the art was solid by Scott Godlewski. Typically Godlewski's art is very angular. And I thought this was a little softer than the art I'm used to seeing from him. The line weights were thinner as well, a little bit lighter. So it worked for me. What'd you think?
I thought it was okay. I understand the purpose of this. I mean, this entire comic serves the purpose of introducing essentially just sort of new elements into the planet, into the Lazarus planet storyline, and the purpose is also to introduce some new characters. They're taking this opportunity to do so. I mean, DC. I mean, I got to tell you, between the Justice Society, Stargirl, what's going on with World's Finest, and again the Lazarus planet here. There's so many new characters that are coming to the forefront here, and we get another Mercy getting some superpowers in a story that we'll review after this. I mean, I like Ash. He seems to be an interesting character. He's sort of cocky. Seems. I find it a little bit odd that he would just sort of. I mean, Superboy, or Superman, or I guess John Kent gives him an opportunity to do the right thing. But he's so cocky and confident, and I mean he certainly plays John Kent like a violin here. And I there wasn't enough here. I don't know if John Kent is just sort of intentionally ignoring the fact that Ash is just playing him. It seemed fairly kind of obvious, certainly by the end. But maybe it's because John wants to like him because there's maybe an attraction there. So that was well done and well played. And I will give writer C.S. Pacat seems to have a handle on the characters. This is certainly consistent with the characterization of John Kent under Taylor. And Scott Godlewski, I'm not a fan of his style of art. I don't like the angular style. I don't like the skinny drawn Superman, but then this is his son John Kent. But I'm not really a fan of John Kent to begin with, to be quite frank. And so me not being a fan of the art and an artistic rendering, that's not Godlewski's fault. That's just the way it is. But I can't fault the story. We got a new interesting character, Ash. I'm curious to see where they go with it.
Yeah, 100%. What do you think of the next story with Mercy?
With Mercy, it's just Mercy protecting Lex Luthor at Luthor Tower as it starts to rain, and Luthor Tower becomes all corrupted, and the lights go out, and there's a blackout, and the systems become corrupted because the Lazarus rain has a way of disrupting mechanical systems and computer-based systems, and it causes a bunch of chaos, and it gives Mercy powers, and Mercy ends up developing powers. She's almost like the T-2000 of Terminator. She can cybernetically. She's a cybernetic being now. She's half human, half cybernetic. She can look human, but also turn herself into a cybernetic creature wherever she wants. Writer Frank Barbary does a decent job of scripting a very straightforward story. This is Mercy. She's a great bodyguard. Luthor loves her. She's so dedicated to her job of protecting Luthor. Sam Baji's art did a good job of conveying giving us a good sense of the power that Mercy has. Very deadly power. She can slice anyone in half, and she can't be killed. She seems to have immediate healing factor. If I've got one criticism here, and it's probably it might be a nitpick, but I'm going to say it anyway. I didn't quite buy into Lex Luthor's characterization. This idea where, Lex Luthor's not someone to stay in the sidelines. Lex Luthor's not going to stay cooped up in his office while his female bodyguard goes and does all the dirty work for him. He's going to sit up there in his office. And I see the Lex Luthor I'm favorable to, and I realize there's different iterations of Luthor that you can go with. And we've gotten different iterations of Luthor in the last 4 years, to be absolutely sure. But I thought that he was a little bit too much of a pussy. My Lex Luthor, I like him as a narcissist. He might respect Mercy as his bodyguard, but why isn't Luthor putting on his armor? Why isn't he taking the bull by the reins? I think he was too much of a sideline in a story. And I realize this is a story about Mercy. I get that. But at the same time, it didn't have to be told at the expense of Luthor just sort of sitting back and why not have Luthor and Mercy work together? Have Luthor it would have been possessed more believability to me, because this wasn't Luthor. I would have liked to have seen Luthor have more gravitas in this story, more agency, which is ironic because this was for Mercy. But what do you think?
Yeah, I almost think the argument could be made that Luthor knew that something had happened with Mercy when the lightning hit. And it was like he wanted to see what would happen. So I don't
Maybe.
know.
Well,
Uh,
you could be
but
right. I never got that sense from the story, but I'm not saying
yeah,
you're
yeah,
wrong. You could be right.
yeah. I mean, it certainly wasn't overt, but I mean, if I'm giving Frank Barbary the benefit of the doubt, that's what I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like Mercy. You know, I've liked her ever since the Superman Adventures cartoon, and at various times she has had superpowers. This is one of those times, obviously. So yeah, I like it. And whether or not she keeps those powers, what it might mean for the future is interesting. And perhaps the most interesting thing about Mercy is the fact that she's not evil in the way that Lex Luthor is evil, but yet she's so loyal to him. Um, and there's been various stories over the years that maybe she's got romantic feelings for him and whatnot, and so kind of kind of interesting in that way.
Yeah, and she does have a very interesting one of the covers. One of the alternate covers has Mercy on the cover, and half of her body is the cybernetic being. So it's a pretty good looking cover too by Zerdy.
Yeah, and her powers are really cool. Like the fact that she can just concentrate and change her body is pretty interesting. But my favorite story, as I mentioned before, is the Power Girl story, both in terms of the voice that Leah Williams gives to Power Girl and the art by Marguerite Sauvage. This is probably my favorite Marguerite Sauvage art I can remember. Like I know I've seen her do some fantastic art previously. Um, there's been times where her art comes across as very static. I think when we were talking about the Superwoman of Tomorrow from the DC Future State event, I talked about how static the images were and how it almost felt like a children's book. There's so much more movement and sense of movement in this, and maybe it's because especially on the first couple pages, there's all these different versions of Power Girl, these different iterations as she's falling through this like dream that she's having. And so I thought the art was fantastic. The colors are a bit of a muted palette, which sort of suits the dream-like state that Power Girl's finding herself in, and just the more vulnerable aspect of Power Girl where she doesn't feel like she's got it all figured out, right? Like the last time I saw Power Girl before this was in the One Star Squadron, which left a lot to be desired. And that was very much a version of Power Girl that was very self assured to the point of it being over the top. And then toward the end of it, we found that she was kind of overcompensating because she didn't feel worthy. This is a more relatable Power Girl that's not, all wrapped up in herself and trying to boost herself up, boost her own self esteem, trying to kind of buy her own press, as it were. Um, this is a Karen Starr rather that knows that she has work to do, that knows that she has trauma, that worries about the fact that she's all alone and feels a little bit isolated. And honestly, that's a interesting aspect, an interesting angle to approach Power Girl because she's very powerful, just as powerful as Supergirl is. But there's even that portion of Supergirl's personality that feels a little separate, right? Like she's not accepted on the same level of like the original seven, right? Of the Justice League. She's not Wonder Woman, Batman or Flash or Green Lantern or Superman. She's not on that level in terms of either popularity or kind of acceptance or exposure. And now you could turn that down to maybe one tenth of the amount of notoriety and exposure that Supergirl has, and that is Power Girl. Yet she's just as powerful. So you could understand why she might have these feelings of inadequacy in a lot of ways. So if Leah Williams is going to be exploring that, I find that to be really interesting. So pretty cool, and yeah, by far and away my favorite story in the anthology. So what did you think?
I I was well. I share your comments about the art. It is an improvement. I just I still think I would like it to be a little bit more look a little bit more action orientated. I also I I don't like the direction of the writing itself. I don't like this story here at all. Giving Power Girl telepathy, I just think that's just how boring. I just find that so boring. And then this Omen character looks ridiculous. Nothing happens. She meets this. Not only that, she meets this Omen character, and I only say this because this is Leigh Williams, but are we supposed to get some? Is there supposed to be an attraction between Power Girl and Omen here? Did you pick up on that?
Not at all.
Okay.
I didn't get that. I didn't get that at all.
There's a lot more. There's a lot more here than there was in the Megan Fitzmartin original issue in Batman Urban Legends. But I hope I'm wrong. I really do. But I don't understand. At the end of Lazarus Planet, Alpha, Power Girl is fighting the Silver Horn King. Why isn't he drawn here? All of a sudden she's not. All of a sudden she's just falling. Why not give us a battle with the Silverhorn King? Draw that. Give us some action pack. Why not have him and have her all of a sudden have this Omen character show up and help her defeat him and a good way to meet him. This I didn't mind this visually. It's very interesting. The art's really good. I got so high compliments on the art because it is. I guess it's taking place in her mind, but if it's taking place in her mind, where's Power Girl's body? If this is all an hallucination, if this is all a dream, what part is the dream? What part is real? What part isn't? There are no backgrounds here, and you can justify it in saying, well, there's no backgrounds because it's all taking place in your mind. Or you can say it was easier to draw because if they were to draw more action, you'd have to draw backgrounds. Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh. I probably am, but I just wish there was a little bit more here. This Omen character, now we got two telepaths, so she meets a telepath. When I look at in Action Comics, this is going to be continued in Lazarus Planet Omega, which is basically the end of the story. So that tells me we're probably not going to see Power Girl again until then. In the meantime, we're going to see her in Action Comics. So we're going to go from this scene to Action Comics where we're just going to be delved in with stories with this Omega character. I don't know. I've never heard of this, not this Omega character. Her name is Omen. This Omen character. I don't know who she is. But I got to tell you, looking when Power Girl is having this flashback and they're telling her you'll always be alone. Basically you're a loser. She's having because she's never fit in anywhere. These are common Power Girl tropes which no one's ever done anything effective with. So the challenge to Leigh Williams is how is she going to make Power Girl interesting and make her feel and give her some sense of agency? And so far, what I'm seeing, look. I want to be able to put my foot in my mouth and say, Leigh Williams, you did a fantastic job. This doesn't really pull me into Power Girl. It doesn't make me want to read Action Comics. This doesn't do it at all, as a matter of fact. And I'm wondering if this is the style of art that we're going to get in Action Comics for Power Girl. I'll be honest. Power Girl. I don't think this is the art, but I don't know. This was my least favorite of this whole thing. I'm most disappointed in this, unlike you. So I really hope to be proven wrong, but we shall see.
Yeah, I just went back through and flipped back through it while you were talking. I don't at all get any sort of sexual tension between these two. I don't know. Like
I never said sexual tension. I never said that. I said hints of an attraction there, and it's right on that page where she says, is this really, are you real? Yes, but I just had the strangest dream about you. And she says, likewise? You mean you were in my nightmare too? Sorry, telepath, can't help overhearing your thoughts. And just the way she smiles. And bear in mind what Marguerite Bennett Sauvage has drawn before, or these, she has drawn some Pride issues in the past. So I'm just saying, I'm
they were in each other's dreams because there's something going on with magic. Obviously, Omen's a telepath, and there's perhaps some new powers that Power Girl has from being exposed to the Lazarus Rain, where she's got some telepathic powers as well. But I don't know that means there's some sort of same-sex relationship on the way. But I could be wrong. I was wrong about Tim Drake.
Well,
you picked up on that. So,
well, now I hope you can say that I was wrong on this too, and
Well, I mean, it's like every time two characters of the same sex are on the same panel together, and you make that. Well, I'm worried that their DC's going that
No,
way. They're too
I only
they're
did
too
that.
woke.
I only did
Yeah,
that once. I did that
yeah.
once, and I was
I'm not
right.
saying you. I'm not saying you specifically, but there are those people that every time they're on the page, that's what they say. Guess what? If you say it every single time, some of the time you're going to be right.
Yeah.
And then you can say, "Oh, look, I was right.
Yeah.
DC, go woke, go broke, blah blah blah."
Yeah.
So, but I agree with you. I hope that that's not what's happening here.
Because it's the pair. It's Power Girl with. She's like the ultra. She's for men. She's a character meant to appeal to men, and it would be a catastrophic mistake if they did that. Catastrophic, in
Well, I
my
don't think
mind.
just because she's in a same-sex relationship, she stops being attracted to men.
Well, I mean,
She's still Power Girl. She still has the window in her costume.
well, yeah, I guess, and I guess we always have the lipstick lesbian fantasies that we can rely
Yeah,
on. Thinking about Power Girl, sure.
and at the end of the day, she's a fictional character, so it doesn't matter how hot she is. It's not like you're going to run into her, at a bar or something.
What do you mean she's not real?
Yeah, right. All
for
right,
yourself.
on to the last book. On to the last book before we get ourselves in more trouble here.
Yeah.
With lesbian terms notwithstanding. The New Champion of Shazam, number 4, from Josie Campbell, art by Evan Doc Shaner, letters by Becca Carey. Doc Shaner obviously does his own color work as well. I won't say that I was underwhelmed by the ending because it sort of fits in with what we've had all along, which is just a solid story for Mary Marvel, which feels like it would be very much at home in the Silver Age. What we do learn is that the villain here, her community college professor, is actually revealed as the daughter of Dr. Savannah. This is Dr. Georgia Savannah. And because of the trauma of being a supervillain's daughter and her perceiving that to have ruined her life, she's gone down a path of trying to redeem the name Savannah, but then she sort of fell into the same traps and tropes that her father did. And obviously Mary Marvel, and this being a very Silver Age feeling story, obviously Mary Marvel comes in and saves the day and rescues everybody, and Dr. Savannah, Dr. Georgia Savannah is thwarted. And then at the end, we get a little hint of Billy Batson showing back up as the Lazarus planet rain is falling, and there's a green overtone to everything. And Mary thinks that she sees Billy, and then she turns around for a second and looks back, and then he's gone. And so she goes flying off to find out what is going on to the entire world and why Billy's right in the middle of it. And we're going to find out what comes next for the New Champion of Shazam in Lazarus Planet, We Once Were Gods, which we've already seen Mary Marvel in the Lazarus Planet Alpha, so we know she's going to be a character that is in the Lazarus Planet event. And I will say, I really like Mary Marvel as a character, but Billy's still Shazam to me. He's still my favorite Shazam character. So I hope that Billy's not off the page for too long. And despite how challenging it is, because there's so many characters, actually my favorite Shazam stories, my favorite Shazam runs are the ones like the most recent one that ended, partly because I think both Jeff Johns has a lot going on with movie and TV stuff, as we talked about many times, but also Dale Eaglesham was the artist on that series to start, and he's not the fastest. But that series, it had the whole family, right? It had Eugene and Darla, and it had and Freddie and everybody, and that's actually my favorite. I like when they're all there, all 5 or 6 of them or however many it is. That's actually my favorite version. Not to say that the Power of Shazam, Jerry Ordway back in the day wasn't great, but I just like they're all different, and the fact that their costumes are different colors. You got green, you got blue, you got red, you got yellow. That's my favorite version because they're all so different. And I feel like I'm getting my cake and eating it too. So yeah, we'll find out what happens with Mary, and hopefully by the end of Lazarus Planet, Billy shows back up. So what do you think about this?
I thought it was good. It was a nice wrap up. I like the idea of Georgia Savannah. I actually like her better than Dr. Savannah. She's a little bit okay. She's, I guess, equally as insane as her. I guess as her father, but it's nice to see them sort of expanding maybe a little bit more of a modern updating of Shazam family mythology. It's good to see. The ending is what interests me the most because it has Mary Marvel flying off to Shazam. She sees a vision of Shazam in a green light, which is likely the light of the lava of the Lazarus rain and what have you. And we know it's going to be continued in Lazarus Planet. We once were gods. We know that's going to be continued in Lazarus Planet, Revenge of the Gods, which ties into the events and plot lines in Wonder Woman, which basically have the gods basically trying to force people to worship them, so that because they're losing their power, and because obviously Shazam, Billy Bats, and Mary Marvel, they get their power from the Greek gods, the gods of Olympus, and that ties in with obviously the gods that Wonder Woman is dealing with Hera, and what's going on with the Clunrads over in Wonder Woman. So it's going to be interesting to see. I'm really hoping that, even though you and I haven't really been huge fans, especially me, of the current Wonder Woman run on the Clunrads, the Lazarus Planet, Revenge of the Gods, I'm hoping that that's a different story. The last issue of Wonder Woman was pretty good, so I'm really hoping with Mary Marvel. I really like Mary Marvel. Billy Batson's pretty cool, so I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, this was a nice little series. Kudos to Josie Campbell. I think it was a nice 4-issue series done in one. I think that for fans of Mary Marvel, I think you'll be happy with this story, and hopefully people will follow her into the adventures in the Lazarus Planet.
Yeah, exactly. I think Mary Marvel. She has a lot of potential. She's just a really good character. A good solid character. So, so that's it for the single issues. There were a couple of others that we didn't go over. Harley Quinn, the animated series Legion of Bats #4 is also out today, and there was there one more? No, I guess that was it. That was the only one that we didn't discuss. And then in terms of collections, there's 3 of them out today. Batman Urban Legends Volume 4 trade paperback. There's also a giant omnibus collecting Batman and Robin by Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason, has an omnibus hardcover, and then Suicide Squad Blaze hardcover, which was very strange, very different from, I think it was Cy Spurrier, right, that wrote that, and that was with Aaron Campbell art, so that's out as well. Quick reminder, don't forget, everybody, go over to my twitter.com/the comic source, and please like that pinned tweet, or if you follow me, just go and like it. I really need to get to those 100 likes. And then I also want to mention that the final Kickstarter for Area 51, the Helix Project, is out. I have an interview with the writer, friend of the show, Trevor Fernandez Linkowitz. So it's a good story. This is the final issue. He's managed to successfully kickstart all 5 previous issues, so I don't see why this one would be any different. That's a pretty great accomplishment to have your first 6 Kickstarters all get funded. So definitely check that out. And there's some other creator-owned interviews I have coming up this week as well, so check those out. Anything you have coming up that you want to tease, Rocky?
Well, I do have a review of Area 51, a Helix Project, from the issues to date. And shout out to Trevor Linkevich. At the risk of sounding paternal, I'm so proud of him, because he's a friend of mine. He's a friend of yours, and I'm so awesome to see him doing so well, and his successful Kickstarter. So shout out to Trevor, congrats on that. And so I'm going to be reviewing that, and probably I'll be doing some more YouTube shorts and what have you, and probably some independent comic reviews. But I'm looking forward. I'm catching up on some of your interviews as well. So you got any new coming out other than Trevor's interview?
Yeah, I actually have an interview with Megan Fitzmartin that's coming up. I have one with Joshua Dysart about Odin's Eye that's coming up. Those are the only ones I have scheduled. But there's probably some others, Dennis Cowan, Dan Didio, that I just need to reach out and set up a time and date. We've already agreed to do it. Now we just need to work out the logistics. So
yeah.
Anyway, book of the week for DC.
You know what? I'm gonna go with for myself. I'm gonna go with Stargirl, The Lost Children. I quite enjoyed that issue.
Yeah, it's a tough one. There are a lot of great titles. Nightwing is deserving, so deserving.
Yeah.
But I think I'm gonna go with Flash. I was really impressed with the second issue of the 1 Minute War, 60-second war. The stakes really feel like they've been raised. Got introduced to a lot of characters, and I maybe would have leaned into Stargirl, Lost Children, just because there's so many new characters and the art was so fantastic. But you picked that, so I'll go with Flash. Really, really solid. So,
Well, it's good.
yep. All right. Don't forget to like the tweet, everybody. Appreciate you joining us as always. Don't forget to head over to YouTube if you're listening to us on the audio only. Look for Rocky's channel. It's Comic Space Boom ! And you know what to do from there. Subscribe, like, ring the notification bell, leave comments on this video. All that really helps with the algorithms and whatnot. Conversely, if you check us out on YouTube all the time, be sure you head over to wherever you get your podcast and subscribe to the Comic Source. That way you don't miss out on any of the upcoming interviews. So that's going to do it for this episode. We appreciate you guys joining us always, and we'll talk to you next time.
See you later.